I'm here, Martin. It was next month. Okay. All right, let me see and make sure that we have all of our board members here today. And just so you're all aware, Devlin is joining us a little bit later in our board meeting today. Okay, looks like we're all here. So I will call to order our Hillsboro School Board work session. And our first item on our agenda is a budget update with Michelle Morrison.
Thank you. Wow, thank you everybody for being here tonight. I'm hoping that my presentation will be in slideshow format here. Trying to see. Kelly, are you on? Yep, here we go. All right, thank you. Welcome everybody. As you know, this is our second budget development update as part of our regularly scheduled process to get towards our proposed budget, which we will present next month. I can see a lot of our budget committee members have joined us. We have Kevin Murphy, Christine Adams-Wanberg. She has stepped into position 4 for the remainder of the term. Welcome, Christine. Good to see you. I can't see everybody else on the screen, but Michael Smith, Don Wallace, thank you guys so much for making time to come tonight. I am going to talk probably a little bit quickly because we have so much on the agenda. A lot of this is going to be review, and so we'll just dig right in, and we'll be taking questions as we go along. If someone can help me monitor the chat, that'd be great. Okay, next slide, please, Kelly. These are the highlights of tonight's message. We're going to be going over the budget, the process again, kind of our outlook for current service level. It hasn't really changed. Our budget assumptions for both revenue and expenditures. The long-range forecast, what we're seeing outward based on the information we have today, and some budget strategies for state and federal funding. We have some other budget considerations as well, and then some proposed budget document changes that we're going to share with you right before we close. Kelly, thank you. And so this part is just our reminder around the local budget law requirements and the purpose of the budget committee. We've touched on this before, especially as we go through the budget committee appointment process. And this is where I share what the law requires us to do. And it's not necessarily the role of the budget committee members to manage programs or staffing levels or get down into the management level of the budget. The purpose of the budget committee is to hear the message, ask questions, and then eventually approve the budget that sets kind of our spending levels for the upcoming year. All right. We will be moving towards our budget committee meeting is currently set for April 27th. So that's the second meeting that we have next month. It is going to be combined with a regular board meeting. So it's that same night. We do have another meeting scheduled, I believe on May, I want to say the 6th. If needed for discussion, but then we will move towards the budget to be adopted on the June 22nd regular meeting. And then we'll begin the budget starting July 1st. Kelly, thank you. All right, so I shared this information at our last update. It hasn't changed. Our pre-COVID current service level requirements, so the expenses that we would incur if we went back to everything before the extended closure period, we would need the state school fund to be set at $9.6 billion for support of our regular operations. And so that's where the most of our focus is normally during the budget discussions. Currently, the governor's recommended budget is set at 9.1 billion for 21-23, with a 49-51 biennial split. That means 49% gets distributed to K-12 in the first year of the biennium, and 51% is distributed in the second, and that allows for somewhat coverage of roll-up costs. And then in our long-term projections, we anticipate a 5% annual increase thereafter, and you'll see a chart that represents that.
Michelle, you have
Yes.
a question in the chat from Mark. If the initial co-chair's budget usually comes in above or below the governor?
It's gone both ways in the last decade. So I would like to think that it's going to come in higher, given our most recent economic forecast. I would hope that that's there. I know that there's been a lot of advocacy for the state current service level for 9.6. So I would like to think that it's come in higher, and that the governor's set kind of a baseline to work from. All right, and of course, our enrollment and student waiting trends impacts our budget and our operating funds, as well as all other districts across the state. And so we're all part of a big fiscal pool, so to speak. And so the turbulence that other districts feel, especially the big ones, can impact us moving forward. All right, can you advance, please? So the other revenue assumptions that we look at are our local revenue and property taxes. We anticipate that they're going to increase 4% average. Some years they're a little higher, some years they're a little bit lower, but that tends to be about the average. And we assume that there's going to be a 95% collection rate on those taxes. We are assessing our major grants for an indirect rate of 4%, which helps us cover some of the operational overhead that comes along with administering a large amount of funds. We're expecting our state and local revenues to remain stable, not decline, based on the current forecast, and that will continue in a recovery mode after COVID. Measure 98, we've been informed that high school success will be fully funded, and also the Student Investment Act will be fully funded for the biennium based on all of the financial economics for the state at this time. All of our other sources are going to be based on historical experience, and if we actually have the allocations from the Department of Education for those, we'll be using those in our budget development. Okay, Kelly. On the expenditure side, every year we do some analysis on our staffing and make some adjustments, and so we'll be including those. Our salaries and benefits, that's under development. It's based on where we see things landing. And just a side note there that 83% of our operating budget is staff. So there's not a lot of discretionary spending happening there. We are truly a service business. And so that takes up a majority of our planning. Our services, you're going to see that we're planning a 7% annual increase in utilities, fuel, subs, and service agreements. And we're using 18-19 as our base year because that was our last full normal year of school. And so that's what we're using to project forward. We're also anticipating a 4% increase to our supply budget, both consumable and non-consumable. Again, going back to our 18-19 as our base year, as we're experiencing some very different spending trends in those areas right now. We're also assuming that pandemic recovery related expenses will be funded by federal relief funds. So we're drawing a line there between what we're expecting to see with relief funds and what we could potentially recover through FEMA and other supports is outside of our operating budget.
Michelle, you have another question. If there are any state updates to the forecast before the end of the fiscal year?
There will, yes, we have one coming up in May. I want to say it's the 19th, and that will be the state level forecast. So yes, but that will be after our proposed budget. So if there's a significant change to that, we will definitely be bringing that back to the board as an update. All right, marching ahead. Mike's giving me the eye to talk even faster. I'm doing it. So our long range forecast, looking ahead, I shared this graph at our last meeting. You can see that at the governor's recommended budget, we have a gap of almost $6.6 million in 21-22, for our pre-COVID service level budget. The blue line represents our revenues and the red line represents our expenditures. And you can see the impact of that is it's kind of like a shotgun blast over time. Once we get behind and need to make some sustainable budget reductions to meet our revenue level, then we have to stay there. So this is an opportunity for some advocacy. I was going to share a quick side note about how the governor's budget has impacted our ESD, who we just heard from at our last meeting. They're planning on setting their budget at the governor's recommended budget level of 9.1. And in next year, that's actually a decrease between fiscal years for Hillsboro. So we'll be receiving less towards services next year from the ESD because their costs are outpacing their revenue, which is, it's not an ESD problem, it's a state problem when we're underfunded. So just putting my plug in there. Now we can move on to the next slide, please, Kelly. So at the governor's recommended budget, if it doesn't get increased, we may be utilizing some of the strategies below. So being creative with our high school success, which could be spent for classroom teachers and student supports. The Student Investment Act, again, that was supposed to be additional in the name investments. And our investments may be more to support staff that we wouldn't get to keep if they were to remain part of the general fund budget. Reductions and repurposing of current general fund dollars. So if we stop one thing over here, we can spend it over there, very similar to our personal budgets. And our fund balance, we'll get the final numbers from the current year in October next year. And so if there's any type of additional funds available, we'll be sharing that and using that, of course, to serve students as well. Next slide, please.
Michelle, can I just add in on that one?
Oh, sure.
So this is just something for us to keep in mind that when it comes to, we're all very excited about the SIA dollars and the Measure 98 and Measure 98 being fully funded. And if the only way that's going to help us, those two being fully funded, is if our state school fund comes in at an appropriate level, so we don't have to use those dollars to offset layoffs in the appropriate categories. So there is still a lot of, I believe, advocacy to do to make sure that the state school fund comes in where it needs to. And Michelle is definitely on board with that. And I too have been in conversations with other districts. So again, SIA being fully funded, Measure 98 being fully funded, that's only going to be an additional investment if the state school fund comes in at the correct number.
Thank you, Mike, for clarifying that. And that's actually a great segue into this shiny new graph that I haven't shared with you guys before. I'm pretty excited about it. It shows the interplay between the Student Investment Act and our general fund, our state school fund. So if you just focus on the very first bar, that represents our governor's recommended budget at $9.1 billion. You can see for 21-22, that puts us at a deficit of, again, almost $6.6 million, represented by the red. The gray, that's Student Investment Act dollars that we're already using this year for current service level, that we did that moving into this year. We had to use a big chunk already. And the blue represents the amount of Student Investment Act dollars that would be left over that would actually be an investment into kids. So as we move to the right, you can see that it goes at 9.2 billion. There's that shift, and our state school fund gap gets smaller, and our Student Investment Act additions get larger. And until we get to the far right, where we would have nearly $7.5 million to invest in our students. So right now, I'm hearing rumors of a $9.3 billion co-chair budget, and it's, I guess that's meeting in the middle. It's better than 9.1, but it's still very short of our 9.6 billion that we've been advocating for. So any questions about this slide? Compliments, because it is awesome.
It is very awesome. It is very good at illustrating what we're trying to advocate. So kudos to you, Michelle, and your team for putting that together. We have a hand raised from Martin, and then a question from Mark.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Michelle, for this awesome slide. I've always had a question for the large urban districts. The CSL budget always means we're losing money. Does that mean that there's somewhere around half of your colleagues around the state, perhaps in the rural areas, that are really making bank under this CSL budget? So we're losing and they're winning?
Yeah, potentially. I think that they can come. There are districts that need more than 9.6. So we've done a lot of pre-work starting last fall with the Oregon Association of the School Business Officials and also COSA to really hone in on what the right number would be for the state, and which happens to be right next to ours. So there are districts that could get by with less without reductions, whether it's their PERS rate that's different, or their fund balance has gotten higher, or they have other resources, or are less reliant on the state school fund, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
There are districts that are in that position. So that is the state number, though.
So full disclosure, Michelle, I've had a conversation with my legislator, who's Representative Campos, who's in her first term, and I suggested, if she wanted the straight scoop on this issue, that she call the HSD CFO Michelle Morrison. So if you get a call from Rep Campos or her legislative assistant, I put them up to it.
Martin, thank you so much, and I will take that call in as much time as she will give me.
Mark, you're next, and then there's a question on the chat from Jackie.
So what we see, great slide, by the way, yes. And what we see represent, I did screen grab it, but it's in our packet too. But what we see here is, if we used all of the SIA dollars to offset budget shortfalls, is that right? So in the past, we had talked about not necessarily doing that completely, is my recollection.
Correct. This is assuming that we're using the same amount of SIA funds that we're using this year, plus adding another 6.6 to fill current service level reductions, if we're going to maintain that level of programming. And then that would give us, at the governor's recommended budget, that would give us $901,000 to invest. Okay.
And I think, sort of to Martin's point a little bit, expanding on that, like, is it sort of like a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, where at 9.1, or whatever the co-chair's budget ends up being, whatever they assert, well, let's go with 9.1. At 9.1, is there like this 1/3 of the biggest districts where that's going to be a shortfall, 1/3 of the middle districts of the 197 where that's essentially keeping them at current service level, and then another third at the smaller districts where they say, oh, this means we can increase services? Is that how it kind of works, or would that be misleading?
You know, I would not speculate. I think that it's pretty spotty who it's going to impact and how. Every district is very different. So I don't know how this would translate necessarily to student population.
Okay, so maybe
statewide
it's not
student
maybe it's
population.
not student population, but are there so with the 9.1 estimation guess of CSL is the governor's aggregate total, and disaggregating all of the students in Washington County, it would not meet current service level for any one of them. Right? We heard Banks maybe close, but that's about it.
Yeah, correct. I can bring you more information about how this impacts other districts.
Yeah, I don't need to do research on other places. I was just curious if it was like common knowledge or something people already knew. Yeah, I don't need you to. That's a statewide thing, and I can look that up.
Hey,
Yeah,
Michelle,
the biggest, oh, sorry, Mike.
maybe just share what the factors are that why one district would be impacted in a way that another district wouldn't. Maybe that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Yeah, there's two sides of our equation here. So we have the revenue side. So a district that is less reliant on state school fund would be less impacted by state school fund being underfunded. And so that's one potential on the revenue side. And I can't think of a couple examples, but I know they're out there. The other side is the bigger differential is definitely the PERS costs. So the districts are paying anywhere from, I don't know, 2-3% on PERS against $1 of payroll to right up to like 25%. So that's the biggest swing on the expenditure side, and that at 83% of our business is tied to people, that's a huge cost difference. And I think that's where you would find it the most, is right there. The other challenge is getting our legislatures to understand what the true cost drivers are. We had an opportunity this year to see what their calculations were for current service level, and they don't align with how we project a current service level based on definition. They go at it more like backing into a potential budget appropriation that they think they would get. So it's super challenging to have those state level conversations for sure. And it's difficult for districts to endorse a single current service level number.
So you're saying instead of adding up all the things that people need to keep doing and then figuring out how much that costs, they start with a number and then try to squeeze it into that number?
Yeah, that's how it appears.
Okay.
They use some legislative fiscal calculations, but they don't add up. They aren't realistic. So.
And I think, Michelle, it kind of ties into Jackie's question about what can board members or community members do to advocate for more funds. And, as a board, we had like our Washington County Legislative Summit and invited our legislators to come. And this was a big topic where we spoke to them about understanding what current service level funding is and what the difference is. And of course, it's such in Martin's terms, wonky area to get really experienced at and have the vocabulary. But I think this is an area where we could advocate to have our legislators be more informed and understand what's happening at our districts. Jackie, you said you had a follow-up comment as well.
I do. My sister is a superintendent in a small, very small rural district, and I just asked her, if the budget comes in at 9.1 million, are you able to keep your CSL right at that level? And she said, no, it would be disastrous. So just following up on Mark's question, and I mean, she has a very small district. I think they have, I always joked my kids I would send them there if they didn't behave because they have like 7 seniors. So it's a very tiny, tiny district. So I'm just letting you know, it's disastrous for them too.
I think using the tools that Beth has provided and staying in tune with what OSBA's activities are and engaging as much as you can. One of the platforms moving into the next biennium, and I'm going to talk fast because Mike is looking at me again, but is the PERS reform, Senate Bill 1049. When they came in, State Legislative Fiscal Office is projecting a 6% decrease in PERS rates. And for schools where it's not that, it's about 3.5%. And so there's this hole that's that's instantly there. And there, it's a challenge to reconcile another agency to that, but we have communicated. Anyway, okay. So I think at this point, I want to go ahead and advance a slide and invite Travis to kind of give us a refresher on the Student Investment Act feedback and the process for feedback and the priorities under that in the event that we are funded at a level to begin to reinvest those dollars in a meaningful way. Travis, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. And I just want to appreciate the conversation that just happened, because and Mark, your original question, which was, are there a third of districts out there who are pleased with the way that stable and adequate funding is happening, and a third who are neutral, and a third who are not doing well? And I think advocating for stable and adequate funding across the state benefits all of us, because the answer to that question is no, like Jackie mentioned. So thanks for the conversation. And I think the way that SIA fits into this is that a year prior to the pandemic hitting, we had engaged in a broad community process. And thank you to the folks on the screen who engaged in that, either through surveys or community engagement activities in libraries or schools, playing with monopoly money to figure out, if you had a finite amount of money, how would you invest it? And we came to a conclusion in this committee a year ago that this would be the buckets that we would fund according to the law, but also the proportionality of the investment. And so the pie chart was something that we wrestled with a little bit to get our values translated into dollars. If you could click one more forward, Kelly. This all stays the same with our application for the student investment account dollars and our reporting. Michelle and I get together and we report on, we got this percentage of the money and here's where it went this year. This year it was largely to cover current service level in the allowable categories, supporting grad coaches, student support and wellness counselors, et cetera. So in the case where we would come back in the green or in the blue, according to Michelle's chart, we would engage in a process with our schools to determine the needs of students today in light of the pandemic, how we would invest those dollars within this sandbox. Likely there won't be a whole bunch of that blue bar, according to the forecast that Michelle was just mentioning. But I also wanted the board and the budget committee to be assured that even in covering current service level, we're investing in the allowable buckets that are here in our list. So that would be staff that are protected, serving students who meet those needs that we established during our process. So each year we'll come back, actually Michelle and I are reporting quarterly on how we invest these dollars. And if more come in, we'll continue to engage in refining where the targeted money goes, based especially on what students are facing now, coming back into school after a year in CDL. Michelle, I hope I covered that correctly.
Yeah, that was awesome, Travis. Thank you. Kelly, can you move ahead one slide? So a lot in the news right now around the federal CARES dollars. So far, they've come out in a few iterations, and we'll be focusing those on basic needs and academic, social, and emotional gains for students as they come back. So trying to make sure that those are very targeted, understanding that they're temporary resources in nature and shouldn't be put into programs that we can't sustain over time, meeting the needs of students for the longest period of time and highest impact. So each one of the CARES funding rounds has a different sunset period. And so really aligning that with what we need to support kids for, again, the longest period of time. We're going to be accelerating learning for students assessed below grade level, extended day academic and engagement opportunities, focusing in on that neighborhood school model and building capacity for that. And of course, the PPE and equipment needed to support all of our students and staff as they return to in-person instruction. Another big one for us at this point is technology. The pandemic, if anything, has really got us to focus on our need for technology and access to technology, and how that is a true barrier to many students needing to access instruction with or without a pandemic. And those needs are going to be ongoing for both hardware, curriculum, and ongoing support and professional development for staff. So those are really what we've been listing out in terms of CARES funding coming up. And then if we could move ahead one slide. These are the other budget considerations. So we have our extended federal program outlook. And so that's going back to our standard federal programs, Title I, IDE, IA, all of the federal programs that we receive, nutrition services, kind of what those, we have to look at those individually and outside of our general fund. Economic stability, there you go, Christine. Our next quarterly forecast is May 19th, and they do stream those online. I can send you a link. And our student enrollment, what happens with student enrollment will continue to drive the resources that we have in our general fund. So it's important that we are serving those students so well. And also bargaining outcomes. We are in the third and final year of our contracts. And so we're going to begin in the regular CBA process coming up here soon. And those outcomes typically do have some type of budget impact as well. All right, one more slide. And so we are making some formatting changes to our budget to include additional information. And we'll be making these changes over a 2-year period to phase in for the Meritorious Budget Award, which is a prestigious best practices award, similar to what we get for our CAFR, but this brings us into alignment with best practices on a national level, and just bringing clarity to some super complex financial information. And so this is going to include the current information just reorganized into 4 major sections, some added supplemental materials, and then some enhanced graphics, which I'm super psyched about. And special thanks and shout out to Jeff Jones, who's really working behind the scenes and leading a lot of these changes for the better. So I think that is all I have to present. Are there any additional questions?
Don't see any. Thank you, Michelle, so much for all this great information. I look forward to more awesome graphics to be presented in the future. With that, we will move on to our next item. And as always, feel free to email Michelle if you have any additional questions on this process.
Hey, Erica, if we could just thank the budget committee members. I know this is kind of a long process and you get updates on a monthly basis like this moving forward. And a lot of this is all just so conceptual at this point in time. As the legislature continues their work and we begin to get greater clarity, of course, there'll be more specifics to go with this. But this is just kind of setting the table for our future work. So appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you so much, budget committee members. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. But if you got to go, we understand. Our next item is our high school on-track data and implications with Dale and Becky.
Excellent. Well, good evening, board. First, I want to apologize for being in my car. I had my second vaccine moments ago, and I wanted to make sure that I'm ready for kids. So I was like, I'll just do it from my car. So I apologize for my lack of professionalism. This evening, we are really giving you a presentation based on a question that I think one of you asked about what is happening at our high schools and how might this affect graduation rates and other things in the future. And so Becky King-Smith, you probably don't see her enough. She is my right hand. She's amazing. Probably I'm her right hand, to be honest, but she's going to co-present with me this evening and really talk about what we're seeing in the data and the conversations we're having with high school. And I'm really proud to represent high school in their thoughts this far. They're doing an incredible job, but you'll see from the data, we have quite a challenge ahead of us, and we're really excited to get kids back in soon because I think that's also going to be imperative as we plan to see really what are the needs. We can guess based on interactions, but All of you who are parents and aunts and grandparents and uncles, you know that once you see those kids, you have a different feeling. You know things in a different way. So we're excited to get them back soon. So we'll go ahead and start our presentation. And we really wanted to talk to you about on-track information and the high school plans thus far. And so we'll start first with our first slide and really go over the positives of the last 12 months. So next slide, please, Kelly. So the positives. So we had past plans in the spring of 2020, and I think that was really helpful because we were in a lot of unknown, and it allowed our teachers to really prioritize the standards that students needed to know most. It allowed families to be flexible in supporting their kids and really prioritize what they needed to know most. So past plans were really beneficial, but we do have incompleted past plans, which I'll talk to you about later in our presentation, that we really need to focus on and support kids in making sure that they pass. We were able to get one-to-one devices. It's been something we've talked about in our district forever, and Wi-Fi. So instantaneously, we had those resources, which really help in a variety of ways of learning, research, etc. The soft start and advisories that we started this year with high school were really, really amazing. High school, because of the number of kids that they serve, don't always get those opportunities to build those great relationships. And I think it's really helped us. We know our kids. When we talk about know by name, strength, and need, it's really easier to do that when you have one advisory that you're really focusing on in addition to your classes. But those advisory students definitely become yours. The 4 classes quarterly, we've always done kind of an 8-period day, but I've heard a lot of good things. We will be doing a survey in the next month to get information from parents, students, and staff more holistically. But overall, we've heard that people like the 4 classes to dig in, and we're not sure if that's due to right now or that's something they want to look at in the future. But having 4 classes instead of 8 seems to be more manageable for staff and students alike. We've done a great job getting meals and resources out to people, trying to meet those needs. Again, I think knowing our kids helps us do that. And then just our student tracking system. You know, we've had DCA on-track information, and we've been rolling it up. A couple years back, we had goals to focus on 10th grade on track, and then we were rolling it up into 11th grade. But those systems and structures have been such a gift in a time such as this. And every person in a high school is connected to a team. They're connected to kids, counselors, our grad coaches. That whole system has really, really been key to working with our kids in the last 12 months. So the challenges obviously impact to families and students. Like every family has a story, and we've all been impacted in different ways, and some impacted more than others. But those challenges are sometimes things that we can address in the school system. And so we've been working on it, and we have systems for it, but the impact is great. Cameras off. A lot of students don't feel comfortable either sharing their home environments, being on screen. They don't want their pictures out there. A lot of kids are choosing to have cameras off, so it makes it a little harder to connect. I've heard teachers say, I feel like I'm teaching to little M&Ms with letters on it sometimes on the screen, and so that's been a big challenge. Student and family needs are ongoing, so it's something that we're continually working on, and I know that there's a lot of compassion and support for it, but it is difficult. I mean, we've all been in this together, and those needs are ever changing. A lot of our students have experienced at the high school level a lot of increased responsibilities. More than ever, we're hearing students say, I'm working full time, I'm taking care of siblings or family members, or there's just a lot of increased responsibilities beyond just school for a lot of our kids. Which impacts attendance and participation in school. So we have asynchronous opportunities and synchronous opportunities, and we always want to see and connect with our kids, but sometimes it has to be predominantly asynchronous. And so attendance, checking in on attendance and participation has been a challenge. And then overall passing rates, and you're going to see that in just a minute. We are concerned about the passing rates with our kids. We look at data a lot, but it's a concern for sure, which I'm going to share with you this evening. Okay, so next slide. So off track, we're really going to talk about the quarter 1 and quarter 2 grade periods to get semester 1. because we want to compare it to previous years, we're not separating the 4 classes and the 4 classes, but just talking about the half-year mark in this presentation. All right, next slide. So our mid-year off-track indicators. So what would we say is a student off track? So if a 9th grader has earned less than 2 credits or is deficient in their core credits by more than 0.5, so core credits that you need to graduate, the reading, language arts, science, social studies, math, those are kind of red flags for us. So those are the indicators. In a normal brick and mortar time, we also look at referrals. We also look at attendance, but at this point, we're really looking at how are they doing in terms of credits. 10th grade, it would be 8 accumulative credits or more than 1 credit off for core. In 11th grade, it would be 14 and 1. It should be more than 1 credit off in core again. And then 12th grade, less than 20 credits and off by more than 1 credit in the core. And mostly it's because you have to take 4 years of language arts. Math is always kind of a challenge. We need 3 years of that. So we want to make sure as we're looking at on track that we're making sure that the kids get our credits. I will remind you that in our district, we offer 8 per year. They need 24 to graduate. So in many ways, that's a good thing for us because it allows our kids to take a variety of more classes. In this situation, it really is very beneficial because it helps our kids have even more opportunities, especially if their family had a very difficult year this year, or maybe spring of last year was really hard. So that additional credits will help us. Okay, so next slide. So this is our tentative off track. And we say tentative because as you will recall, we have been asked to continue with those past plans throughout this year. So we are supporting kids and completing those past plans so the numbers may look better, as well as new guidance that we have from the governor as of the 19th of January and encouragement from the state to really look at different ways to show proficiency, not just specific assignments by grading by proficiency, project-based. So we're working on that. We do have policy that supports that as well. So it is in line with our policy. It's just a higher call to do it. So as you look at this information, I just want to remind you that 2 years ago, our 9th graders would have been about 8% off track. We had crested the 91% on track. So you can see just in 2 short years, the impact on how many kids that we have off track and the concern that we all have in our system in terms of supporting them. Next slide, please. And I'll hand off to Becky. Is Becky here? Oh, Becky, you're muted.
And I had such good information I was sharing in that 5 seconds that I was muted. That was really like my gold star moment. Geez. All right. So the grades of students that are struggling the most. So if we can go to the next slide. To explain this one a little bit so that you kind of have a context of what you're looking at here, is that what this is all of the letter grades that students earned at that level. So of all of the letter grades that 9th graders got during quarter 1 and quarter 2, 10.8% of those were F, I, or N. So I is incomplete and N is no grade. So we had some I's and N's given in larger quantities this year than we have in the past because of what Dale just mentioned about providing flexible opportunities for students to be able to still get a grade. And so sometimes what the teacher has done is put an I or an N as a placeholder on that transcript and is working with that student to be able to get that letter grade opportunity. So I do want to be sure here that what we're talking about is not all F's right now. We're talking about that currently kids don't have credit, right? So an A, B, C, or D gets you actual credit. Anything else doesn't get you credit at this point in time. So you'll see kind of a trend here that mirrored what we were just looking at with off track in regards to that our students 10.8% at the 9th grade level is not having credits, then an uptick at that 10th and 11th grade year, and then it comes back down again in 12th grade year. And there could be a lot of factors for that, right? We know that at the 11th and 12th grade year, our students aren't necessarily taking, some of our students might not be taking that full load of courses because we do have 8 credit opportunities per year. Versus when you look at that 9th and 10th grade year, most of our students really do have a full load of classes. So that could be why you're looking at like the previous slide where we had more 11th graders who were off track, but you look at this slide and they don't have as many of the non-credit opportunities, right? Because some of that could be from previous years, some of it's because of the load that they have. Next slide. CTE concentrators. So when we were digging into the data, we noticed something that was consistent with something that we've been tracking for probably the last 5 or 6 years very consistently, especially with our grad rate data, but also as we've been making strategic investments with our Measure 98 high school success funds, and what some of the success has showed us with that. So you're looking at here basically the same data, except for that extra column now is showing you our CTE concentrators. So a CTE concentrator is a student who has taken 2 or more credits in that CTE program. So we're not necessarily talking about completers yet, right? So that's why you don't see any data at the 9th grade year, because at that point in time, a student would not have had the opportunity to have taken 2 credits in that CTE program. The 10th grade data is probably going to be actually a very small number of students, the N number on that. What we're really looking at here is our 11th and 12th graders. So you do see that having students in one of our CTE programs and having them really engaged in that, we see success, right? They're getting more credits and they're getting better letter grades than we see in students who are not involved in our CTE programs. Next one. Okay, core courses. So this is, as Dale said, core we often refer to is our social studies, science, math, and language arts. So that is, of course, a focus area when we're looking at on tracks. We wanted to dig in specifically how are students doing in those classes. So in that next slide, so again, to describe the data, this is the same thing of 9th through 12th graders who took a science class or currently are taking a science class, and all the letter grades that were distributed to science during quarter 1 and 2, what percentage of those did students not get a credit, right? So that's the F, I, and N again. So this is not uncharacteristic in regards to what courses students struggle with the most. So if you look at our data over many years, math and science are oftentimes those courses that are barriers to students, that are difficult for them, whereas language arts and social studies, our students have generally higher success in those classes. What is uncharacteristic is the general number here, right? So we generally do not see this high of a rate of students not getting credit by the by the end of the semester. Our next slide then is looking into an interesting trend that we noticed, and we noticed this trend in kind of popping up just anecdotally, and then when we started looking at the quantitative, it was really reinforced by that. So what you're looking at here is a comparison of last year's semester 1 to this year's semester 1, and it's the distribution of overall grades for all courses we're talking here, and the letter grade that they earned. So what you see here is kind of a reverse bell curve that we are having this year. So the great thing is we have more students who are getting A's, right? And so that's a positive that we can see about that. And there's potential theories as to why that might be. For some of our students, that might be that they actually had less activities and less responsibility during this time, right? Maybe they're in a situation where some of the activities that they generally were involved weren't happening during the pandemic, and so they had more time to focus on school, and the schedule really worked for them. On the other end of the spectrum, though, it's the exact opposite, right? We have theories that there's a lot of our students, and we know this by talking to a lot of our students and families, that there's been increased responsibility and increased things that are pulling our students in a lot of different directions that are making it more difficult for them to engage in class. The schedule is not necessarily working for them. And so that is often why we're seeing that increase in the FI or the N. So a lot of that is that work to track down the student, to connect with them, to try to figure out ways for students to get credit for those FI and N. Our teachers are working tirelessly right now to reconnect with those kids from quarter 1 and quarter 2 that didn't earn credit, to be able to work out plans to do that. All right, I think the next one is back to Dale now.
All right. So just in regards to the previous slide, kind of that bimodal, where students are doing really well or students are not doing so well, that is consistent with the conversations we're having in terms of reaching out and connecting with kids. And of course, that's of grave concern to us. And you will notice that we look at this data. We just had a big data dig day after the end of semester grades that Becky facilitated, to really have our principals make sure that they look at data by school across our district, share ideas, and we look at key groups in the data so that we can adjust our strategies and our efforts. So the next slide I want to talk to you about is looking at it by race and ethnicity. So this is a graph that shows all marks, all grades for all courses, not just the core from the previous slides. So how you would read this would be, out of the total grades distributed to students who identify as Latinx, 18.8% were non-credit bearing grades. So you can see from this graph that our BIPOC students are more impacted and are struggling more with not receiving passing grades than our white students. So this is an area that we, of course, are looking at or concerned about. So next slide. This is kind of a breakdown slide of the distribution of grades, again, because we want to see, are we seeing kids kind of passing or failing? And you'll see, if you look at this, that this represents sort of the distribution that we saw in the previous grade. When we look at the whole group, we see some students struggling a lot more than other students by race. The next slide, we looked at CTE by race. And as you look at this, you'll see once again that our CTE concentrators in general are passing more classes. However, you will see that there's a slight uptick in our Black students who identify as Black and our students who identify as Asian. And we've actually written in our last Perkins grant some goals in order to address those strategies and to meet the needs of those kids. But in general, one of our theories has been that when our students have purpose and they're connected through CTE, we generally see them more engaged in school because they see the direct application of their interest in those classes. So we generally see nationally, as well as in our own district, better grades for students who are CTE concentrators. So next slide. So the big question was, what could this mean for our graduation rates? So you kind of, you've seen this data over time, and we've seen a continual increase in graduation rates over time. But again, with so many kids off track, we are really concerned about what that could do impacting our graduation rates. Bigger than that, we're really concerned about the impact that it has for our kids and their futures, and making sure that we start looking at ways to support our kids in different ways. So of course, we look at the tools that we have. So we're going to flip to the next slide. And I believe, Becky, you were going to talk about this slide.
Yeah. So as we started realizing some of this data and digging into this, we started looking at what is our research telling us, and then what are some of the guidance and tools and support to help us. So as you are all familiar with us bringing this and talking about this multiple times to the board over the last few years, we have a lot of great systems that we have with our on track work, which started with some of the research that came out of the University of Chicago. And we actually had a team of educators that went out to Chicago and did some of that initial learning. And so, and we've seen very quickly the impact that those systems and structures had on improving our in-track work over the last few years. Turns out there's not a ton of research about what happens in education during a pandemic. So what we could find, though, is kind of like when kids are out of school, what happens to that learning loss, right? So that's kind of been the big conversation during the pandemic. And one of the research articles that has been used and cited a lot is actually from during Hurricane Katrina, about 15 years ago, when kids in the New Orleans area were out of school. Now, this is drastically different to our current situation. Kids at that time were out of school for 8 weeks, right? And so, but what they did see is that with their most impacted students, being out of school for those 8 weeks actually resulted in potentially up to 2 years of learning loss for those students. And so over the last 15 years, they've followed different cohorts of students, because now everyone from kindergarten has been able to graduate out of the system at this point in time. And the biggest thing that they realized in different schools and districts in that area trying different things is that remediation, meaning that you redo the learning, or you kind of hold them back, or you redo the skills of second grade, even though kids are in third grade this year. That is not effective. Acceleration is the most effective. We continue our learning. We go into third grade next year, and we start our learning with the third grade standards and with our third grade learning. And then what's most effective is spiraling back. So it's, okay, we realize that this is a skill that you need some support in, but we're going to do some quick mini lessons on that skill and then continue our learning forward. And so those schools that did that is where they saw the most success. So that's the theory that we're really putting moving forward in our teaching and learning conversations. Is we're not going to remediate the learning. We're going to make sure that we pre-assess our students. We're going to make sure that we have that formative assessment data so that we know where our students might have gaps, and we're going to address those where they're at, but we're going to keep moving forward with our learning. We have our CTE and career and college pathway data. We mentioned that you saw that already coming up a lot here, that we know that when students have that purpose and focus, it not just helps them in their learning in that program, but it helps their comprehensive learning, right? And so that we know that that's a strategic investment that we have been making and we need to continue to make. And then just engagement and hope, right? So there's data and information out there about kind of hope theory. And when students have agency and vision and they know that people believe in them, they show up and they perform and they do well, right? And so we know that as educators that now more than ever, we need to support our students and we need to provide them hope and vision for the possibility that they can. So the guidance that we've gotten to help us with this is Dale mentioned that we do have school policy that allows us flexibility and how students can to get their instruction, get their learning, and ultimately get their credit. Since that's what we're talking about a lot in this presentation, is that being on track, which a high school means that earning those 24 credits towards graduation. And so our school board policy does mention that there are multiple ways that students can demonstrate their learning to be able to get that letter grade. And then ODE has been working on a collection of resources and has really doubled down on it over the last 12 months in regards to getting this out to schools about some specific options and clarity and language around how students can earn credit. It used to be that earning credit was really tied to seat hours, like literally hours in a classroom, right? So X number of hours equaled blank number of credits. And that went away about 5 years ago. Legislation changed around that, and it became more about, can students demonstrate their proficiency and understanding of the learning? And so that's what we're looking into now. We mentioned those I's and those N's that some of our teachers are providing students to then be able to circle back and do some extra learning, is that we don't need to have a timetable necessarily on a student's ability all the time to be able to demonstrate their learning only in that like semester window, right? Like 18 weeks. And if you don't get it, then sorry, Charlie, right? Like we're looking at being flexible in different ways that students can demonstrate their learning through demonstration of competencies, through assessments, through project-based learning. So ODE is being really helpful in providing us some resources in that area.
Becky, you have a question here. Similar, I think Jackie asked the same question. This is from Martin on how does our tentative off-track numbers compare to state or national data?
Dale, do you know the answer to that one?
I don't know state or national data right now. Usually off-track numbers are kind of at the end of the year. I mean, we monitor it throughout the year, so I couldn't really speak to that. I know, in our research around on track, it's always been like 90%. It like the ninth grade sort of predicts your graduation rates. And so we've always had a goal to be over 90%. And we've been working towards that pretty closely in each grade. So to see numbers that are 25 to 30 are pretty staggering and off that mark for sure.
There's another question on here. How would a 4-class schedule in person impact something like band and drama? Would students only have band in the fall or the spring, and is Avid an everyday class in an in-person AB block schedule?
If it's okay with you, I'd like to do the last slide, and then I could address that. Would that be all right?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Becky, there's 2 more slides. Becky does this one. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is, again, grounding us in some of that work that we talked about in regards to research that we're showing has been working and how that's been reflected in Hillsboro School District. So this is some of those investments that we've made with the high school success dollars, as well as some of our own investments that we've strategically been trying to make over the last few years around the expansion of our CTE programs. And this is just to mention that this data number is just CTE. So those are like Perkins approved courses. So we do have a lot of other programs that are considered college and career pathways that might not necessarily be CTE. So do know that we have actually many more career pathway programs than just are listed here. But we have seen an increase of those being offered across our system with an increase in courses, an increase of our non-traditional participants. And so non-traditional participants are often, there are certain indicators that are that Perkins recognizes, which I think is students who are underrepresented for gender or for race. So for instance, in like construction programs, that might be women, right? So that underrepresentation of our women identifying students participating in construction. And then our completers, right? And we do see that last year, our completer rate did go down, even though our participation rate was up. And so that could be for a couple different reasons, right? As we know, the last year ended kind of awkwardly, as well as we did have some programs due to funding that we did have to put on hold for a year or two. And so those types of things could have been impacted as a result.
Okay, last slide. So what could this mean, right? So just as a reminder, this is mid-year data. And of course, our principals have been looking at this. They've been trying different things to try to support our kids right now. So, we have some different pilot programs. Hill High's been doing some evening classes. We're doing Lippy. I think you saw in your board update, Century had over 180 kids in Lippy last week. So we're really trying to interrupt some of these trajectories right now. But definitely it could mean that our graduation rates would be impacted. We've had conversations about essential skills as well, especially since we are not doing SBAC testing, but the state has waived that for this year and next. But as you look forward, if students have to complete essential skills requirements, that'll be something else we need to kind of tackle. We're going to need more courses, more core and elective courses. If we have this many students that are struggling, we're going to have to figure out ways to accelerate their learning. which we'll talk about summer programming in a minute as well. But as we look towards next year, there are some students who maybe didn't get the opportunity to engage in classes at all this year, or maybe they had to prioritize certain classes over others. And so we might need to offer additional courses for those kids. Like Becky mentioned, some skill-based support as we get to know our kids. We're really excited to get them back in the spring because I think it'll really help us know what we need to do in terms of support for them in the fall. We're going to need out-of-the-box programming. And thankfully, one of the things that has been beneficial in this pandemic is we've created a lot of cross-district collaboration meetings and opportunities to share best ideas and learn from each other. So that's great. We really need to focus on engagement, all those things that we know engage kids, and make sure we're strategic about offering things, inviting kids, connecting kids to things that they're interested in and are passionate about. Our college and career pathway work's going to continue. We've talked about kind of expanding that K-8. I know Brooke's going to do a presentation next month on the Pathway Center and sort of that work. And I think that that's coming at a wonderful opportune time. We continue to talk about summer programming. You've heard that there's additional funding for that. And we're starting to have conversations about like, what classes are we offering original credit for? Which do we prefer to help students with academic options? Under the guidance of ODE, it really allows us some encouragement and flexibility with that. And we've had a lot of schools piloting with some of those standards-based grading. Liberty did a presentation to our secondary team. Their freshman team has been doing that work for a couple years, and they're expanding it in their schools. So they've been able to offer some things to our team in terms of models and exemplary practices. Travis is leading a group that's starting to talk about accelerating learning through the summer. I think it's important to remember that as much as we want to expand summer school, and we will, we also need teachers and staff to work at summer school, as well as bus drivers, and we need adults that have the capacity to do that too. And so we're hopeful that bringing kids back is going to ignite kind of our energy and our passion, but we're not exactly sure how summer is going to go. But we're still planning for strong programs. Those credit and learning attainment plans are still out there that we're working on, and I think those will be really beneficial as we look to make up those credits, but then also accelerate the learning. Again, we know our kids. That's been just pivotal for us. When we talk to other districts and they're wondering about their kids, we know our kids. We have data on our kids. We track them. We connect with them. We support them. We know what the needs are. And I think that that's going to be super important for us moving forward. Collaboration with families and ongoing, really trying to connect with our families and be honest with them when their kids are off track and partner with them. A lot of our families are struggling and they're tapped out and they're having a hard time supporting their kids in their academic aspirations. And so we're going to continue to work and hold space and be prepared to serve kids and families when we can reengage them. And then just overall, just continuing with that team support. I mean, I'm really thankful to work in this district. And I think all of the facets of our HSD team work together. And it's going to be a heavy lift to get our kids back on track, but we're committed to doing it. Okay, questions for Becky and myself?
I know Mark had some questions on there, and maybe you can answer in the chat as well.
Yes, my apologies, Mark. Yes. So the 4-person schedule, we actually need to kind of get information from people, because this year, when you had a 4-period schedule, if you had drama, you probably had a quarter 1 and quarter 3. Maybe that worked okay, maybe it didn't. I think it's going to be something that we ask about in the survey. AVID historically has been an every other day class because it's been a 1-period class, but many of our schools had the advisor be the AVID teacher, so it allowed for that continuity. So it'll be an area that we'll need to get input from students, staff, and parents to see how that worked for them, and to potentially think out of the box if it didn't work for them, but the 4-period day is something they're interested in. So it's still an area we need to dig into and learn more about.
Thanks, Dale. Shan, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Dale and Becky, for this presentation. I find it very informative and helpful. one question that comes to mind is, what kind of supports and resources will we have for graduating seniors who we won't be able to, they will no longer be in the K through 12 system for us to help accelerate the learning or to catch up on some of the skill sets that may have been lost due to the year that they've been out or the year that they've been doing CDL. Have we been coordinating with higher education partners or, other, I guess, beyond K through 12 partners?
Yeah, so our kids can continue to stay in our system until 21 to receive their diploma if they so choose. There are also partnerships with like PCC if students wanted to complete their graduation requirements while they take classes. Our early college program sort of already has that ability to do that. I think what we're really trying to focus on is a case-by-case basis on what does Becky need to complete her classes? What's getting in the way? How do I help Becky? Does she want to come back to school? Is she wanting to transition? Does she need to take her classes in person, online? Like, how do we help each individual student? The governor in her announcement last week really encouraged us to prioritize bringing our seniors back to school. And as we look at our schedule and thinking about bringing kids on to campus more, we definitely will be prioritizing our seniors and students who are off track.
Thank you, Daryl.
To that?
The only thing I would add is that these are conversations that we have in our College and Career Pathway Steering Committee, where we bring industry partners and post-secondary partners together with Hillsboro School District teachers and counselors and administrators. And those are some of those exact conversations we're having, is how can we as a community support each other with this?
Thank you, Dale and Becky. Board members, if you have any additional questions, just post them in the chat for them and they can follow up later. We're 10 minutes behind our schedule, so we need to move on to our next agenda item, which is with Travis. And we're going to skip our Chromebook one until the end if we have time. But let's go with return to in-person learning update with Mike, Travis, and Dale.
All right, thank you. Kelly, if you can go ahead and present, that would be great. Thank you, Dale and Becky. Great information. I appreciate you putting that together and sharing it. Okay, while we're waiting for that to pop up, just a few thoughts here. As you know, we had, there was a new order from the governor directing schools to, directing students to come back in person. And when there is an order like that, what you really wait for are the following few days after that, where the guidelines come out and you see if those guidelines have changed, and we can then make determinations as to what we're able to accomplish based on the guidelines that we still are obligated to follow. And I know that I just want to acknowledge right off that there's frustration out there around these guidelines and the fact that we are following them. And I understand that, but we have said all along that we would follow the state guidelines and that are put forth by ODE, the governor's office, Oregon Health Authority, that we would continue to follow those. And this is no different at this point. So let me just move forward here with kind of an overview of some of the significant changes that we saw in the guidance as a result of the last governor's order. And the main thing, or the hugely important thing, is the removal of that 100-person week cohort limit. It used to be that students could only interact with 100 other students, and that has been removed, so that 100-person cap is 100-student cap is no longer there. And this may allow us to offer 2 days a week at the high school instead of the 1 days that we're currently planning on. Now, guidance that didn't change would be things like the square footage requirements, the 35 square feet per student. That did not change. There was no change in guidance on transportation. And when it comes to significant barriers that would allow us to have more time in school, those are certainly two of them, the square footage and the transportation issue. Another change that we're acknowledging and that we're going to be moving towards is that All students would be required to be back by March 29th, or that could be moved to April 5th if the staff is engaged in professional development during the week of March 29th. So you'll remember that K2, we have pre-K2, we've always planned on bringing back on March 29th. And then previously it was just going to be grades 3 and 4 that returned on April 5th. We can tell you now that we're going to be bringing back grades 3 through 6 on April 5th at this point. And we have, we're going to have more information on that, and you'll see a schedule of events here in the next few slides. But that is something that we'll be doing, is grades 3 through 6 will be returning on April 5th. Our plans to bring back our secondary students aligned with the governor's date that was set forth. So that's April 19th, and we remain on track to do that. There was a question early on when the governor's announcement came out, would we be allowed to remain to have a pure offer of comprehensive distance learning for families who chose that? And the answer is yes. One of the allowances is that families who prefer to stay in person will have the opportunity to do that. There were some specific changes that took place around band and choirs. So indoor singing, that can take place, and there'll be more information on that coming in a minute, as well as instruments being allowed to be played indoors. There's still the guidance does indicate that obviously it would be best if that can occur outdoors, but there is some allowances for that to occur indoors. Then the final thing I would say, and then I'll turn it over to Travis to do a few more specifics, is the screening of students as they return. That is something we can continue to move forward with. That is allowable, and we do plan to do student screening as they come to school. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I believe Travis is first, who will cover a few slides and then hand it off.
Thanks, Mike. The next slide is an adjustment to the table that you've become accustomed to around the metrics that would allow us to come back in certain grade levels. And this table has been adjusted to reflect the governor's order. So really we're in the green with any district fewer than 200 cases per 100,000 would be obligated to offer on-site or hybrid instruction to students, K-12. This was a little more graded by elementary versus secondary in a former table, and now we're clearly in the green zone. This morning, Washington County posted 80 plus cases per 100,000, whereas last week we were at 86. So we're continuing to decline in the cases per 100,000 in Washington County. Thank you to everyone who has worn a mask and washed your hands. We're grateful for that in Washington County, and clearly in the green zone here. I see that, Martin, thank you. One more slide, please. And according to Colt Gill from Oregon Department of Education yesterday in the webinar, there will be more guidance coming soon in addition to what Superintendent Scott just shared. One area is in graduation pathways and in graduation ceremonies. So we are going to stay tuned and keep you informed on those chunks of guidance that will come out soon. And then the State Board of Education, we believe, is working on a statewide waiver of summative assessment, meaning that when students come back in the spring, we may not have to focus our attention on smarter balanced assessment testing. The State Board has already waived essential skills, as Dale alluded to, and kinder assessment this year in the pandemic mode that we're in. So that would be welcomed by us. We'd like to provide the opportunity for students to do assessments, but we would then not be mandated to do that this spring. We want to focus on instruction for our students. So stay tuned for more on that. I'm looking in the chat, where might we be out of alignment with Governor Brown's return to LIPI guidance? I don't think we're out of alignment in any area. Can you click one more slide, please, Kelly? So the adjustment to the timeline that Mike just alluded to is in the next slide. And we've become accustomed to seeing this each week, and this has actually served us well for a while now. The one change is highlighted in pink here, where grades 5 through 6 would come back on April 5th. The impact here is obviously a benefit to those students. we would bring staff back to prepare for that on March 31st and have a 3-day transition period. And then grades 3 through 6 would come back to school on April 5th. So as Mike said, we'll stick with the timeline for March 29th as the launch date for pre-K through 2, and then April 5th becomes the launch date for grades 3 through 6. This will bring us in alignment with the governor's order. One more slide, please. I think I'm going to pass to Dale to talk about some of the contributors to our schedule limitations.
So one of the big limitations we have is transportation. If you saw one of the videos that was created for secondary or elementary, you can see that there are restrictions on pretty much one person per seat unless you are like a sibling. So where we would normally be able to get 60 to 70 students on a bus, we probably can only get between 30 and 40. So it requires more routes in order to pick our students up, which also impacts how the time that it takes to pick up kids. So if you normally could pick up 60 kids and now you have to do it twice, you're going to need more time in that zone, which pushes the start time of the next school down a little bit. So Carol Hatfield, our transportation person, has been doing an amazing job working with us, trying to figure it all out. But it definitely is a limiting factor in terms of how often we can bring kids in, and then the time of day that we can bring kids in for instruction. The square foot requirement. So as you remember, each student needs 35 square feet. And we measure our classrooms to see how many desks we can get in and how much space. In many schools, especially in our high schools, our classrooms don't hold very many kids. When you start measuring that out, in addition to having one spot for a teacher, there are classrooms, too many classrooms that only hold between 12 and 16 students with that space. So that definitely limits the number of kids that we can bring in. Information with families regarding intent to return. So as you recall, a couple weeks ago, we sent out a survey out to families for elementary to see who would return, because whether or not students need transportation is a factor. If we only need to transport 30, then we don't need to run the bus twice. So knowing who's coming back and if they needed transportation was really key. In the first blush of sending out surveys, we got about a third. We went another turn around, sent it out through different kinds of medium, and including teacher supporting, pushing it out to parents, and we were able to get about 75 to 80% at all schools, and then the phone calls started. So at this point, we are about 95%. We know who's coming back, which is great. Families we haven't heard from, we're assuming that they're coming back, so we save space on the buses. In high school and elementary, we just sent it out last Friday. We had about a fourth of our kids, families respond. And then this week we sent it through kids, and we'll send it again. But we're at about 50% of our families and students reporting, and we're getting similar numbers, around 2/3 of our kids and families saying that they will be returning to school. So once we know how many kids are actually coming, then we'll be able to figure out if we can expand the number of days specifically at high school. I just want to say, as a mom of a senior, I want nothing more than my daughter to come back to school 2 days a week as a minimum. I also know that if the rooms don't hold the students, my daughter, as much as she wants to be at school, she's doing okay academically. I mean, thankfully, she has different supports and skills, and she seems to be doing fine. I want to prioritize those kids that aren't doing okay if that priority has to happen. But ideally, and especially if we maintain these numbers around 65%, I think it's very feasible for us to be able to make bringing kids onto campus 2 days a week a possibility. And high school leaders want that as well. So I think there's more information to come. I think the most important thing is that we need our students and our parents to fill out that survey so we can do good planning, plan well for both middle and high school.
Dale, the next ones are just a clip through different schedules, bell schedules for each level.
Oh, thank you. So next slide, please. So we wanted to kind of share what are the strategies for the weekly and daily schedules. So we're intending to maintain, especially based on the fact that a third of our students are still asynchronous. We're intending to maintain those Wednesdays so that we can do those reach outs, those small groups. It allows teachers to collaborate with each other in terms of supporting kids and student needs, work with parents and families. So students would continue to go to school in K through 6, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday for K through 2, and then students in 3 through 6 would go 2 days a week, either Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. And the times you'll see there, if you have a 7:45 start time, then you're ending at about 12 o'clock. 8:15 goes to about 12:30, and 8:45 to 1. And again, a lot of this is due to transportation and us being able to run our routes to get kids home. Next slide, please. In grades 7 through 8, again, we tried to line up alphabetically so that families have their students going to school at the same time. So students A through L would be going Monday and Thursday. Students M through Z would be going on Tuesdays and Fridays. And then we really broke that up, A through E on Mondays and F through L on Thursdays. If students get to come 2 days a week, then they would line up with the A through L on Mondays and Thursdays, and similarly the M through Z on Tuesdays and Fridays. So students will go through their schedules. We're really thankful for the collaboration with our union, and I think we heard that both teachers and students wanted to stay. Some of our neighboring districts have reshuffled students in order to accommodate CDL classes versus in-person classes, but we're going to do our synchronous live stream, which allows our students to stay connected to their teacher and continue to learn the lesson together. And hopefully you saw that on the videos that's posted on our website as well. But it allows that connection to be maintained with the teachers. So middle school would be going from 10:15 to 2, and high school would be going from 10 to 1:45. And again, they will run through their schedule and go through all of their class periods. Next slide. And then this is just a sample schedule, just kind of showing that we're prioritizing morning meeting, that social emotional connection with each other, and then our literacy, math, and individual support for students throughout the day. And then next slide. Also, you'll see, as I alluded to, that we're going to maintain our advisory. Students will go through periods 1 through 4. And then there will be staggered dismissal with grab and go lunch, both at the middle and high school level. They will have breakfast on site, but it will be grab and go lunch. Elementary, they will have the opportunity to have breakfast and lunch, both on campus. Next slide. And then again, 9 through 12. So students are arriving, class starts at 10, and they'll grab their lunch and head out around 1:45. Next slide.
Thanks, Dale. So the subsequent slides are a few different supports that we have for staff in the community. Hey, and in the chat, I noticed folks would like this to be posted to the folder, and I just want to accept the blame for having this being in the editing process right up until about 10 minutes before the meeting, and this wasn't an oversight by Rose. She'll be free to share that with you all, and that's my fault that we were busy on this one. So this is a screenshot of the cover of a staff, what we've been calling a staff handbook, but this is a large document that goes from everything from sample schedules to what to expect for health and safety and all kinds of information for our staff members, classified, licensed, super tech, and administrators that went live today through our admin team. The next slide is a screenshot of the intro to hybrid learning guide for families and caregivers. And this is a shorter document, but again, it goes over some of the health and safety expectations and is a support for family bilingually. We are going to send out a packet to families with guidance on masks and on well student checks and things like that. So Beth's going to talk about that in the final slide. As part of our comprehensive communication plan, we feel like as a district, we need to provide information to all staff now that we have all of our plans in place. And this is pretty final, although all of these documents are subject to change if guidance changes, and we'll stay in compliance. So just wanted the board to understand that we're putting products out this week. One more slide, please. And then as far as our blueprint, at Friday this week, we're going to post our operational blueprint for HSD, and each school has worked on their own school-based blueprint. So all of our health and safety protocols have been kind of in this larger master document, and then each school will be able to tell you what that looks like in practice as we walk through the halls, and what our schedule will be, et cetera. That'll all be posted online per the Ready School Safe Learners guidance. That's a requirement. And then click one forward, please, Kelly. As teachers and classified staff come back into schools, principals are equipped with some district-created professional development. So if I'm a teacher coming back to serve second graders, I'll be alongside my colleagues learning about interactive live stream at a basic level, and then sort of a beyond the basics, level 102. I'll have some social emotional learning modules put together by counselors and folks in our schools, along with Brooks leadership, to make sure that we have safe and healthy students returning to school, and a way to have an on-ramp back into in-person learning. Our tech department has put together a website for interactive live stream, showing several different models for direct instruction and small group, and how to wire my classroom. When do I have lids up and when do I have lids down? And then our Michelle and Tracy and our nurses have put together a Safe Schools training on COVID safety. Building leaders are also creating supplements to that. So I might have something unique for my school if I'm a second grade teacher. Please click one more forward. All this is thoughtfully put together in what we call a playlist. So those modules can be clicked on, and staff across the district can access interactive live stream learning, social emotional learning, health and safety, and how to set up our technology for success. And this is maybe a copyright infringement, but this is all within TeachFlix, which is our internal website put together by our instructional leaders, so that this is easy to use for staff. One more, please, Kelly. I'll kick to Beth for communication timeline.
So this is just kind of the high level overview of what we're going to be communicating out to families tomorrow for our weekly return to school planning update. It's going to be chock full of information. We knew it would be, just with the timing right before spring break. So you can see all the various pieces of information that tomorrow's communication will include. We will also give a nod to the fact that by Friday, we will be getting in the mail a hard copy packet to all families in the district that contains some important information from our district nurse team, including the school health check-in process, how to do a home screening of your student every day, the Too Sick for School flyer, mask guidance, and things like that. There will also be links to a number of resources, detailed instructions on how students will access meals from March 29th forward, how they can look up their bus routes, how they can access the hybrid guide for families and caregivers, and just a whole bunch of information for folks. So that's what's going out this week.
Thanks to everybody who contributed to all these different levels of support as we transition back into hybrid. And that's the last slide. We're happy to answer any questions that there are.
Thank you, Travis, and everyone. I did have a question just regarding the survey. I think, Dale, you mentioned that we had about 95% or so feedback already. And what does that look like in regards to our families that are wanting to return to hybrid versus ones that are staying in CDL? Do we have like a percentage of what we see is a trend in our district? Or is it different like at the secondary versus primary level?
So Erica, it's about 2/3 of our families saying that they want to send their kids back, and that's K-12 right now. Again, in grades 7 through 12, we only have about 50% of those surveys back, so that may change. I can also tell you that more of our Latinx community is not saying that they will be sending their kids back. We see a disproportionate amount of our BIPOC students will not be returning back to school. So that's another concern of ours, because we know that their families are impacted, and we definitely want to make sure that we prioritize support and time to assist them with their studies as we continue to ensure every student grows and learns.
Thank you, Del. And yes, we've known for a long time now in Washington County and other counties that our BIPOC communities have been more disproportionately affected by COVID. So it's understandable. I think the fear is real in those communities. And the other kind of follow up, I think I just wanted to clarify is because that data looks different for every district. That's what also makes it challenging. If other districts, communities have a different percentage of families that are coming back versus not, it affects the amount of spacing that is requirement. So I just want to thank you for all the work that you're doing and trying to be as flexible to meet the needs of our specific community. I see a raised hand, I think by Mark on here. Did you have a question or comment?
Yes, please. Yeah, sure. Just curious. So is it fair to sort of oversimplify and generalize and say, as the information has changed, as the guidance has become less restricted, we've accelerated our timeline and we're looking at the possibility of bringing more students back at the high school level than we had originally intended. So as the information has changed, as the information is less restrictive, we are modifying our plans to sort of accommodate as many students returning as possible. That seems like what the overall picture was, right?
That is true, Mark. We have, every couple of months we've had just change in guidance, and each time we've adjusted to that guidance. And this time around, we believe that there's a possibility that we can bring high school kids back more than once a week, whereas before the guidelines would not allow us to accommodate that because of the square footage issues and because of the transportation issues, and previously because of the cohort size issues, we wouldn't be able to pull that off. So now that we have a better understanding, just as of yesterday, as to what the change in the guidance is, we're working towards seeing if we can pull that off.
And Dale, it was like it's about 50%. Is that what you said have responded to the survey?
Yeah, we sent it out on Friday. So yeah, we've heard from about 50% of our kids and families.
So on, hopefully, I know you're brilliant. I'm sure you have a plan. March 29th, when somebody doesn't show up and they haven't told us they're staying in CDL, we'll find the family and make sure that they understand that things have changed, right?
Yeah, the plan is really to give our families a couple more days, and then we start doing the one-on-one outreach just to see. And again, like in elementary, we were able to contact around 95% of our families. So there's still a few we're still trying to connect with, but we're planning on them coming back, and we'll continue to reach out.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dale. Yadira, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. So there's a square footage limiting factor. So let's say that the square footage limiting factor was changed or whatever, right? It sounds like it would still be difficult for us to get more students in if also the transportation restrictions aren't also kind of changed accordingly. Is that correct?
Yeah, a combination of those two changing would be the most beneficial to us. We are starting, we have before, but we are going to reiterate in our communication, if families are able to transport on their own, that is helpful for us because we can provide transportation for more kids that way. But yes, those two changing together would be ideal.
Okay.
Devlin, you had a question?
Yes, I just had a question about the, so considering the fact that the data that was in the on track slideshow that we were shown earlier, it also looks like that our juniors and seniors are specifically struggling a lot. I also noticed that as far as it looks like the grades 5 through 6 have also been accelerated. Was there any consideration about doing that for high school students also?
Are you talking about accelerating the timeline?
Yes, it looks like grades 5 through 6 are being
Yes, I understand. Yes,
pushed forward a
thank you.
week.
Yeah, I'll share a few pieces and then let Travis chime in. I think there's a couple different factors. As you know, as a high school student, your term ends the week of, well, it ends on the 10th, I believe, or the 9th. And so there's a concern about coming back. If you came back on the 12th, that's the first week of the term. And so what would you be doing asynchronous? Should you at least meet your teachers? If you were to come back the week before, it might impact finals, which also are an issue. So kind of starting after that first week is kind of a nice start. Additionally, our teachers needed opportunities to get fully vaccinated. They were in the last wave of that vaccination. So when you kind of track the vaccination, I believe that we need to go that far out in order to ensure the vaccination of the staff so that they can return. Travis, what else did I miss?
No, that's it. Those are the facts. And we're open to accelerating the timeline. We just have to confirm that staff are vaccinated and that that's the best decision for high schools. So we're open to that, but have not made that decision yet.
Thank you. Any other final questions? Okay, so we had one last item. I don't know if you want to touch on it, Mike, or do you want to just push it for our next meeting?
Jordan, we'll leave that up to you. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to push it to the next meeting?
You have like 4 minutes.
Yeah, we can bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. So I am going to recess our work session, and I'll see you back here at 7.
Google had a bunch of new layout options in Chrome browser for this, huh? Like I could make even more people appear on the screen. It's pretty cool.
Welcome back, everyone. All right. So I am calling to order our Hillsboro School District Board meeting. Our first item is our flag salute. If you will all please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Thank you, everyone. Our next item is our land acknowledgement, which I will be reading. As we gather here today, even in this virtual setting, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge that our district service area is on the occupied traditional homelands of the Osalati Indigenous people, lands we now call Washington County and the state of Oregon. We thank them and their ancestors for being the original stewards of this land. We take this opportunity to offer gratitude for the opportunity to learn, work, and be a community on this land. We also acknowledge the systemic policies in colonization that have led to genocide and assimilation that have impacted Indigenous and Native families, both past and present, and those who will be affected in the future. According to Kalapuya tradition, people have lived here since time immemorial. Indigenous people still live here today, having persevered through US-sponsored war, displacement, genocide, and oppression. We honor the Indigenous people whose traditional and ancestral homelands we stand on, the Tualatin Kalapuya, Atlamet, Clackamas, Tumwater, Molalla, Bands of the Chinook, and many other Indigenous nations of the Columbia River. We believe it is important to acknowledge the ancestors of this place and to recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their ancestors. We also recognize the urban, Indigenous, Native, First Peoples community living in the metro area, which includes over 400 tribal nations. Our next item is our recognitions and proclamations, and we have Director Kim.
Thank you. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that family and community involvement is a significant factor in the success of schools. By becoming a volunteer, family and community members are providing an invaluable contribution to the education of our students. The Hillsboro School District appreciates the service of dedicated volunteers to assist professional educators by offering their time, encouragement, and meaningful contact with students. The Hillsboro School District acknowledges that volunteers are called upon to assist teachers and staff with the day-to-day activities involved in providing a balanced education for our students and are an important part of a team that strives to ensure that each one of our students succeeds. The Hillsboro School District volunteers for spending innumerable hours serving schools as chaperones, mentors, after-school tutors, club leaders, booster club members, PTA and PTO members, guest speakers, classroom helpers, athletics coaches, and in countless other ways. The Board of Education of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim the week of April 18th through 24th, 2021 to be Volunteer Appreciation Week. We urge all community members to join us in recognizing the many contributions and achievements of volunteers to the development and prosperity of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kim, and thank you to all of our volunteers, especially our board member volunteers as well. Thank you all. Our next item on the agenda is our approval of the agenda, and I'm looking for a sample motion.
I move that the Board of Directors approve the agenda as printed.
Yep. So it has been moved by Jackie and seconded by Yadira. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please let me know in the chat your vote. Yes votes are Jackie Spross, Yadira Martinez, Martin Granum, Lisa Allen, Chien Kim, myself. The motion carries. Our next item is audience time. And I believe we have some audience, so I will read our audience participation statement. Public participation in board meeting is governed by policy BDDH. Visitors who wish to speak before the board must complete an intent to speak card available on the top of the HSD homepage and submit it to the executive assistant to the board of directors, Rose Roman. Comments concerning a published agenda item are limited to its designated place on the agenda unless otherwise authorized by the board. Comments about non-agenda items will be heard at this time. Commenters should include their name and, if speaking for an organization, the name of their organization. A spokesperson should be designated to represent a group with a common purpose. 3 minutes at the board discretion will be allowed for an individual comment. Commenters may offer objective criticism of district operations and programs, but in public sessions, the board will not hear comments regarding any individual district staff member. Commendations involving staff members should be sent to the superintendent. Channels for the board's review of legitimate complaints involving individuals include Board Policy KL, public complaints. If appropriate, the board chair will connect the visitor with an administrator to receive comments regarding personnel. Any hearing conducted before the board regarding personnel shall take place in an executive session. The board thanks all visitors for their presence and appreciates the input of community members. Beth, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Erica. So we do have 12 items of public comment tonight, which I will read. I did want to let you all know in advance that we had been discussing moving our platform for these meetings from Google Meet to Zoom. And one of the reasons we were considering that was because the Zoom webinar suite has some functionality that we felt could have been a little bit more helpful with things like audience participation because it allows different levels of participants. But we were a little concerned, I think, with their streaming capability on the back end. And so rather than put our ability to have a public meeting in jeopardy, we elected to stick with Google Meet for this time. So because we weren't really equipped to allow people an opportunity to let you see their faces as they're speaking to you to give their public comment, we did offer 4 opportunities for submitting public comment, which is a change from how we've done that all year. They could either submit written testimony as they have been able to do all year, or they could submit a video that is no longer than 3 minutes in length, or an audio clip no longer than 3 minutes in length, or they could have requested that we give them a call when it's their time to provide public testimony so they could do so verbally live with you all. Nobody took us up on the phone calls, video or audio files, but we did have a lot of written responses uploaded to our Google form. And I know that Rose has shared those with you in your board folder so you can see them in their entirety. Some are going to be just a little bit too long for me to read here, but there is nobody who requested to address the board that's going to be left out. It's just that there's 1 or 2 that provided so much additional supporting documentation that that's going to be in your folder. Okay. So the first comment, and also just a reminder to those watching, this unfortunately public comment time is not a time really for us or for the board to be able to engage in a back and forth conversation or to provide a lot of answers to questions. But if you would like to address specific questions to the board, you're always welcome to reach out to them via email. And those addresses are on our website. If you go to About Us and Board of Directors, there's links to everybody's email address, and they're really great about getting back to folks who email them. All right, our first comment is from Mike Teagarden. Dear board members, thank you for your time. I am a concerned band parent with 2 highly involved students. I believe eliminating the option of 0 periods for band and choir is a terrible idea. We should be looking at ways to create extra opportunities, not take them away. You have kids willing to get up early so they can make music together. These kids get great grades, don't cause trouble, and learn time management due to their busy schedules. They are becoming lifelong musicians. I don't see a drawback to any of this. The teachers who lead these programs want to be there. But if you eliminate zero period, I know many students will not add jazz band to their 8 other credits, including my son. There isn't enough time. Music is the highlight of my kids' school day. Please don't damage that. Sincerely, Mike Teagarden. The next comment is from Becky Takara. I am a concerned parent. I want to speak about the upcoming school year schedule. I have heard rumors that they may be opting to not offer a zero period again next year. My son has already had to drop 2 electives in order to continue participating in jazz band, albeit that in CDL that class is not ideal. If it continues to be part of the regular day and not offered before school, it will eliminate a total of 4 credits of other opportunities he would otherwise have. I know as non-jazz band people, you think of it as an option he is choosing, but it is not. Music has been part of his life for 8 years and optional. It helps him deal with everything else throughout the day and gives him focus and happiness. All his other classes are advanced or AP classes, and I don't want him to choose between what will get him into college, the college of his, or what gives him joy. Please consider offering zero period classes. I am also wondering why we would get rid of it. If it's a matter of credits, offer it for 0 credits. If it would still fill up, no one takes jazz band for the credit, they take it for the experience. No one has explained what the downside of zero period is. I do not see one. The next comment is from Christina Cook. I have followed the plans for the Hillsboro School District with much frustration. You have had a year to figure out how to get kids back in school safely and swiftly, and what I see is a lack of urgency and caring on the part of all concerned. I have 4 children in HSD who were honor roll students. At this point in the year, we have pulled our middle school children from HSD at their request because the education is so pathetic. I have spoken to their friends who are laughing because they are now on the honor roll because it is so easy. You haven't even been able to figure out the attendance issues, and 4 hours a week isn't going to suffice. You are losing the kids. Parents are fighting to get them to log on and pay attention because they don't care. I also have a 3rd grader who will be repeating 3rd grade next year because of the pathetic lack of education that you call CDL. My husband and I are working from home and listening to the classroom as he sits in the dining room with us. Your teacher is working so hard, but is so busy solving tech problems, issues with children who log on late or leave early, that her teaching is completely hampered. In a normal school environment, an elementary student receives approximately 30 hours of instruction time per week. My son is receiving 13.5 this year. And when he returns to school, that actually reduces because you are cutting the days shorter. I am completely stymied by your lack of urgency, response, and caring about the students under your care. It has been proven in numerous states that you can open the schools full time with little to no transmission of COVID. Please see Idaho, Arizona, Utah. You have had a year to see these other states and what they do right and wrong, and have done nothing. You have numerous examples in our own area of private schools that have been able to be in person all year. Faith Bible is a perfect example, right in the heart of downtown Hillsboro, yet our children suffer. You say that HSD will follow the science, and yet I don't see you trying. This hybrid plan is a sop to try and appease those who want their children in school. I want my children educated. That is your job, and you are failing miserably. You have stolen a year from the life of my children because of your ineptitude and lack of caring. The next comment is from Ashley Northam. Dear Hillsboro Board, I am a parent of 2 high school students in the district. I am also a speech language pathologist who has worked in education for 20 years or more. I am in support of all staff being safe and having what they need to do their jobs. I am also highly aware the schedule and CDL has put on some families that are already in tenuous situations where they must work multiple jobs, where housing and food is scarce and volatile, where students are being raised by single parents, by grandparents, by foster care families. This district is not made up of a conglomerate of families who all work for tech, who can all stay home to do their jobs. Schools are an integral piece of our society. School needs to be a priority. It has not been up to this point for HSD. As students come back, I hope the district is prepared for the mental health and social support they will need at all levels. I ask that this board actually read the research and scientific data and that board members stay informed and lead. There are several board members up for re-election. We need a board that leads, not a board that is uninformed, unwilling to follow data and science, and unwilling to take action instead of being continually apathetic, silent, and complacent. Up to this point, you have exhibited no leadership in following the current science and data. You have not spoken out. You are silent. I realize that school districts have been and continue to be completely hamstrung in their planning, partially due to the lack of ability to act based on the RSSL document from ODE and the overly restrictive guidance from the Oregon Health Authority. However, it has been shown over and over in many studies across the nation that 3 feet is sufficient, along with other procedures involving masks and hand sanitation, to avoid the spread of the virus. Students are not the spreaders. The CDC should be releasing an updated recommendation of 3 feet in the very near future. Hopefully, OHA will adopt that quickly, as they should have. I encourage you to join in asking us for this update from OHA and ODE that is holding students back from returning to schools a full 5 days. Remarkably, the southern, eastern, and central areas of our state are bringing students back. They are not stuck as we are in the metro area. They are not offering excuses or delays. Communications with the board is wrought with responses about how low our numbers are and how unsafe it is to return, or you have a doctor friend who says it isn't safe. I'm frustrated and disgusted that it seems you are not informed and not following current national scientific research and data, or you are hiding behind these excuses to appease OEA and local groups. It's difficult to tell where your alliance lies. If you are given more ability to bring students back based on the reduced distance guidance, would you even do that this school year? Or is that all a great plan to sit on the April start date for middle and high school, and even if ODE and OHA updates their guidance, you will continue with the very minimal on-site time you awarded middle and high school students? I urge you to be leaders in quickly responding to current data, current research studies, and the 48 other states in the nation that have put students back in seats in classrooms. We are tied with California to be dead last to be back on site in schools. Oregon has been highlighted in articles in the Atlantic, the New York Times, and continues to be highlighted as beholden to ignorance from our public leaders who fail to follow the science and are stuck in continual mediation with teachers' unions in some districts. The next submission is from Arwen Nielsen. Going to school for only 3.5 hours is pitiful. In total, we will only be going to school 5 or so times for 4 hours. That is nothing. How does that help us better when our current education is limited and insufficient? Online school is causing hundreds of capable students to fail their classes. That is unacceptable. 3.5 hours of school, most of which will be with a distracted teacher who is burdened by both an online class and an in-person class, will not be enough to educate the children of Oregon. I know you just want the best for the health of Oregon students and families, but seriously, you just wasted a whole year and a half of high schoolers' education, and now we have a bunch of half-wit idiots. And that's not being rude. I too have felt the strain of this education on my shoulders. I am a senior and a varsity swimmer and polo player. I am absolutely and definitely not prepared for college. This education has set me up to fail, and I am certain that it is not what is supposed to happen. Thank you for trying to keep us safe, but how safe can we be when we grow up too stupid to be able to get jobs and support ourselves? You just created a possible generation of homeless people or struggling workers. I'm begging you, try harder to help the children. We have our lives ahead of us. Don't let those die from a lack of education. The virus is not what's killing us right now. Lack of education and suicide is what is killing this generation. Please reconsider your school times. It is of the utmost importance. The next comment is from Melissa Ashby. I am very disappointed that the ODE did not change the 6-foot spacing for kids in school. Students going back to school twice a week at best for 3.5 hours per day to continue to be taught on their Chromebooks does not serve our kids' needs and further exacerbates an already incohesive and lacking learning experience. Most elementary students have only had language arts and math for an entire year and have missed a full year of science, social studies, health, geography, history, music, PE, etc. Our kids deserve more. Our kids need to be in school every day and not on their Chromebooks. Our kids need hands-on learning. They have missed out on an entire year of education. My high school student has continued to keep her 4.0 GPA, but this does not reflect her retention or learning. Teachers are begging students to attend class. Just completing half of an assignment is enough for 4 classes. Students are not thriving in CDL. Students are not learning. I have been vocal about this on Facebook, and teachers from my children's schools have messaged me privately and told me to keep fighting to get our kids back in school. The teachers want to teach in person. The teachers want to go back to school. Please reconsider the 6-foot spacing rules, and please look to other schools across the country who have safely opened and have already figured out how to teach the students in person. The next comment is from Sylvia Plaisted. I just wanted to acknowledge that I understand that 100% of the decision to get kids back in school full-time hasn't been solely in the hands of the school board. However, I hope that the school board can also in turn acknowledge that any influence they could exert over getting kids back in school has not been used. Every vote that has come before you on getting kids back to school has been a no vote, most notably after Governor Brown's December 28th order to get kids back in school. Now you are getting kids back in school at the lowest possible denominator and only after being pushed to do so. What you are offering at this point is unacceptable, and please don't point to OHA metrics as a reason because once again, whatever their metrics are, you aren't pushing back. Let me tell you what 1 year of no school looks like in the home of a stable, healthy family with relatively decent resources. It is the motivation and fire gone out of my junior and freshman. It is regular bouts of crying and begging to go back to school from my 3rd grader, apathy from my 6th grader, and it is pulling my kindergartner and putting him in private school because he was in tears every morning for another meeting. We are luckier than most. We have the resources to have one parent or the other available to help throughout the day. We've been able to keep our kids in sports and extracurricular activities because for the most part, club sports have kept going. What about the kids who don't have the same resources? Where is the equality in that you espouse so often? My question to you is right now, will you commit to at least vote yes for all kids to be back full-time in person for fall 2021? Would you be willing to vote yes to send kids back to school full-time now, even if it's just to show your agreement that kids should indeed be back in school full-time now? The next message is from Camille Hammond. Thank you for the efforts that have been made by the district administration in returning our children to school. I know there have been many changes to keep up with. Many parents were very frustrated and discouraged yesterday when the Oregon Health Authority chose not to change the RSSL guidance on square footage and instead stuck with the arbitrary number of 6 feet/35 square feet. The World Health Organization's school guidance suggests that in areas with community transmission of COVID-19, at least 1 meter, 3.28 feet of distance should be maintained between individuals. That's much shorter than the CDC's recommended 6 feet. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that desks be placed at least 3 feet apart and 6 feet if possible. In an open letter to the CDC published in USA Today, Drs. Henderson, Gandhi, Poeg, and Johnson stated, keeping schools closed or even partially closed based on what we know now is unwarranted, is harming children, and has become a human rights issue. They go on to say, no science supports mandating 6 feet of distance with children wearing masks. A 6-foot distance between students creates space constraints for schools to open in entirety. There is data supporting at least 3-foot distancing. Oregon has chosen to attempt to put a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage by justifying hybrid as in-person education. Oregon has not quantified what counts as hybrid. In contrast, Washington has made it clear that hybrid needs to be at least 30% of learning time in person. Because of the strict 35 square foot guidance, most of Hillsboro students cannot return to school more than 2 days a week. The current schedule has middle and hopefully high schoolers going to school 2 days a week for 3 hours and 45 minutes. This is the equivalent of 7.5 hours per week, barely more than the typical 6.5 to 7 hour school day middle and high schoolers would be normally expected to attend and what many students across the country are currently experiencing. This 7.5 hours a week adjusts to approximately a total of 10 full academic days this year, 10 days out of roughly 245 school days since March 13, 2020. There are over 60 doctors in Oregon who have signed an open letter asking the OHA to reconsider their 6-foot measurement. There is also an open letter signed by superintendents in Central Oregon representing 32,000 students asking that the guidance be changed. They said, in part, it is clear from the governor's executive order that she too sees the urgency in returning Oregon students to in-person learning. However, for those of us who have been forced to create hybrid schedules due to the requirements addressed above, We know that while better than CDL, these schedules severely limit students' learning and create stress for our staff. My question is, what has the Hillsboro School Board done to advocate for the children and families in our district to have the choice of being back in school full time? What will they do in the future? I have yet to see any advocacy or urgency. I would like to ask Hillsboro to take a stand with the districts of Central Oregon in advocating for all of our students to be back in school full time. While I realize we are late in the year to make many changes, if changes are not made, we will not be any better off in the fall than we are right now. This is not acceptable, and we cannot allow this to happen. Thank you. The next comment is from Wendy Burton. Last night, I was talking with my senior. She doesn't complain much, but she said she had a headache. I asked her if she was drinking water, eating enough, etc. She said she always has a headache these days because she's on screens all the time, for school, to socialize with friends, for entertainment. It just broke my heart that my sweet, uncomplaining daughter is suffering even physically from this horrible situation. That doesn't even include her lack of interest in anything, because what's the point? I just wish she had the opportunity to enjoy even a portion of her senior year. We all know it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, but to a 17-year-old girl, it's the culmination of everything in their life, and it's their grand rite of passage into adulthood. Please, please give her a little of that experience, please. The next comment is from Larry Dickinson, I apologize. Hello, school board. My name is Larry Dickinson. I have had students in HSD for 15 years and will for 13 more, and I believe public schools have value. Public schools are great equalizer, brings students from different demographics, heritage, languages, economic, support, abilities to learn together. Public schools have great value in making diverse friends, working together, and helping one another with the differences, but all that was lost through COVID. Our state is among the last states in the country to open schools, open sports, open parks, where these burdens lands on the youth. Our state's youth have been kept from their passions of education, club, music, and sports longer than about anywhere in the country. Our state's youth have been kept from making friends, being with friends longer than about anywhere in the country. I coach the Brookwood and South Meadows chess team, Meadows swim team, coach with Hillsboro High water polo and swimming cohorts, all currently. I spend about 20 hours a week with students from HSD, which started in August when I started a swim team of about 50 students. I do know students and I hear their voices, their sadness and frustration. When they miss practice, I reach out through calls and text, not to get them to practice, but to make sure they are taking care of themselves mentally. This shouldn't be me for 8 months. This should be their friends at school. This should be growing experiences, not behind a laptop, which school can provide. I know as a school board, making agreement with union is not easy, but the agreement you achieved was done with tighter conditions, in parentheses, OHA creates, end parentheses. These high schoolers deserve more, and especially the seniors. I have a blind senior swimming with me. He has not been back with his friends at school in over a year. That's just cruel. I have many water polo players. This was their senior year in prep for college to say goodbyes and just have some fun. Please go back to the drawing board, but get these students in school more than 3.5 hours a week. The next comment is from David Colette Tissara. We support academic excellence through a variety of opportunities for students to achieve their goals. Prior to the pandemic, Century High School offered several of these opportunities during a zero period so that students could have the flexibility to study music in addition to core academic subjects. As parents of a rising sophomore in high school, we see that there is pressure on students to drop music in order to fit academics into the 8-credit limit. There is a strong correlation between participation in music programs and academic success, particularly in higher education, and we support any student's interest in pursuing both music and academics. In this spirit, we are recommending that the school board move to enable the return of zero period for the 2021-22 year and maintain it long-term to support our students' success in the future. Thank you. And the final comment is from Jeff Maurer. Please allow the option of zero period at Century High School. My student is already forecasting for concert band next year, but doesn't have room for another music class. She would love to continue learning from the zero period jazz band that she took last year. Let me just make sure okay. Nothing else has come in, so that is all of the comments.
Thank you, Beth. Our next item on our agenda is our consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
So it has been moved by Mark and seconded by Jackie. Is there any further discussion? Okay, please let me know your vote in their chat. Yes, votes are Sheehan Kim, Yadira Martinez, Lisa Allen, Jackie Spross, Mark Watson, Martin Granum, and myself. The motion carries. Our next item on our agenda is our action item section, and we have the appointment of our CCAC member with Travis Raymond.
Hi, thank you, Erica. Tonight, announcing an opening that we have on the CCAC. We have 4 student reps, and there's one opening for which we have had a student indicate interest. So tonight, joining us is Maya Muro. Thank you for being here, Maya. I haven't had a chance to meet you in person. Nice to meet you. But Jonathan Sanchez has been working with Maya, and I think you have her application in your packet. And Maya is here tonight to say a few words about why she would like to serve on the Community Curriculum Advisory Committee. And this will be really awkward, but after she shares, she'll excuse herself, and then you can talk about her and vote for her if you choose to join us on the CCAC. Maya, sorry that we have to do this format, but thank you for your flexibility, and I'll turn the floor over to you to tell us about yourself and why you're interested in volunteering for the committee. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. As he said, I'm Maya Muro. So sort of why I wanted to join the committee was that I've always been interested in like learning as myself, and then growing up I was like started babysitting, and then I started working at summer camps, and then right now I'm tutoring in English literacy for kindergarten in Hillsboro right now, and I'm also in the early childhood development program in my school at Liberty High School. And so I've always been sort of interested in learning, and I thought this would be a cool way for me to also help out in my community and bring in my own experience as a student, as someone who's been through public and private school, and someone who's had like been taught into like French European standards. And then like my mom is also not from here, so she also talks to me about like what she learned in Quebec. And so yeah. Do you have any questions for me or something?
Maya, thank you for being here. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So what we'll do is have the board vote quickly on recommending you for the CCAC, and Jonathan and I will follow up to connect you hopefully with our April meeting, and we'll tell you how the vote turned out.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So that's really against all traditions of social skills and totally awkward. So sorry to do that to you, board members, but I would allow it for a vote to happen now, and then we'll connect with Maya and get her connected with the CCAC if you choose to approve her.
I move that the board of directors appoint Maya Mura to the open position on the CCAC.
Second.
Okay, so it has been moved by Mark and second by Sheehan. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, please let me know your vote in the chat. Okay, The yes votes are Martin Granum, Sheehan Kim, Yadira Martinez, Jackie Spross, Lisa Allen, Mark Watson, and myself. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. I'll follow up with the communication and get Maya involved. Much appreciated.
Okay, our next item on our agenda is to award some contracts. So Adam, are you here?
I'm here. Can you hear me? All right. Good. Yes, I have 3 contracts to hopefully get awarded tonight. The first of these is for the construction of secure entry vestibules at Indian Hills Elementary School, W.L. Henry Elementary School, Mentor Bridge Elementary School, and Tobias Elementary School. And the low bidder on this project was Inline Constructions, who we're very familiar with. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have regarding this project.
I don't see any questions, so I'm looking for a motion, board members.
I move that the Board of Directors award the contract for construction of secure entry vestibules at Indian Hills Elementary School, W.L. Henry Elementary School, Mentor Bridge Elementary School, and Tobias Elementary School to Inline Construction in the amount of $321,703.
I'll second.
I heard Lisa first. So it has been moved by Adira and second by Lisa. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, please let me know your vote in the chat. Okay, the yes votes are Martin Granum, Sheehan Kim, Jackie Spross, Yadira Martinez, Lisa Allen, Mark Watson, and myself. The motion carries.
Great. The second contract then tonight is to replace the EFIS siding at Century High School. This is the stucco type surface on the Century High School that is starting to fail in some areas. So we're taking this opportunity to replace that. Again, we had several bidders for this project, and the low bid was 2KG Construction.
I move that the Board of Directors award the contract for Century High School APHIS replacement project to 2KG for the base bid amount of $628,005 and the bid alternate number 1 bid amount of $161,235.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Jackie and second by Lisa. Is that correct? Or Sheehan? Lisa, okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay, please let me know your vote in our chat. Our yes votes are Sheehan Kim, Martin Granum, Yadira Martinez, Lisa Allen, Mark Watson, Jackie Spross, and myself. The motion carries.
Thank you. And the final bid or award tonight is for work at Indian Hills. This is the last little bit of work we have to do at Indian Hills. This was construction that was required by by Washington County to complete this project, and it is on the frontage of Rock Road in front of Indian Hills Elementary School. So again, happy to answer any questions.
Like, what are we doing on the frontage? I walk by there with my dog all the time.
Yeah, we're having to replace several sections of the sidewalk, some of the panels there, and also some of the asphalt in the road.
We're not losing any of the trees, right? Or any of the trees have to go?
No. No, this is just on the sidewalk, the half street improvements.
Okay.
Yes. And the, I'm sorry, I didn't mention the low bid on this project was Peel Inc.
I move that the Board of Directors award the contract for improvements to Rock Road fronting Indian Hills Elementary School project to Feel Incorporated for the base bid amount of $129,479.80.
Second.
Okay, so it has been moved by Mark and second by Yadira. Any further discussion? Please let me know your vote in the chat. The yes votes are Martin Granum, Sheehan Kim, Jackie Spross, Lisa Allen, Mark Watson, and myself. The motion carries.
Thank you. That's all I have for tonight. I will be back next month. I have 2 final contracts to award prior to construction starting this summer, and then we'll be ready to hit the ground running. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Our next item on our agenda is to approve our superintendent's contract with Mike and Connor.
Good evening, that will be me, Erica. So tonight we will be here to approve the extension of the superintendent's contract per the policy CBC. And you'll see in the situation page, it states there that the contract is in effect from July 1, 2021 through July 30th, 2024. And this is in line with the Oregon statute that has a rolling contract that goes in line with what we have also for teachers and administrators. So I would like to be able to move forward with this extension of the superintendent's contract.
And just a note there, Rose, that you made a comment that has a different on the chat that says 2024 versus our packet says 2022. Just want to verify that's correct. Perfect. Thank you. Did I see a hand raised by Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say for those listening in and for our colleagues who weren't around when we originally approved this contract, that this step we're undertaking this year is consistent with the strategy that we outlined with Mike when we really renegotiated the contract when it was fully due. And this is just an annual step that we're taking that's very much the strategy that we set in motion several years back.
Thank you, Martin. Any other questions, comments? If not, I'm looking for a vote. Sorry, I'm looking for a motion.
I move that the Hillsboro School District Board of Directors approve the extension of the individual contract with the superintendent effective July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024.
Second.
Okay. So it has been moved by Martin and second by Yadira. I heard first. Is there any further discussion? Well, I just want to thank Mike publicly again for all your hard work, especially this year, navigating this very difficult situation that we're navigating. And that's just the reality, is that we are trying to survive a pandemic at this time. And I thank you for all your work and for helping our staff keep their motivation and morale up and keeping them engaged. And thank you so much, Mike. So with that, please let me know your vote in the chat. Yes votes are Martin Granum, Yadira Martinez, Lisa Allen, Sheehan Kim, Mark Watson, Jackie Spross, and myself. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kana. Our next item on here is inter-district transfer plan with Beth.
Yes, thank you. So this is the time of year where we need to finalize an agreement on what we will open up in terms of inter-district transfer slots for students who wish to come to the Hillsboro School District from other districts, and for HSD students who may wish to attend school in another district. So the process is governed by House Bill 2747. And this year has been a little bit different than other years, as I'm sure doesn't surprise you. We have a process that is also governed by the House bill that allows for students who move anytime kind of from the beginning of the summer on. If they move during the school year, they're allowed to remain in their current district of residence for the remainder of that school year. But then if they want to continue attending that school district, then they need to apply for and be granted not only release from their new home district, but then acceptance from our district, and vice versa if it was one of our students wanting to go to another district. So we had 197 students on what we call administrative placements for those various types of moves this year, which is a lot higher than normal. But if we kind of take into account, obviously, the extenuating circumstances of the COVID pandemic and students aging out at various grade levels and whatnot, we are proposing to open 100 slots for interdistrict transfer, which we think will be sufficient to allow space for any of our former students who may have moved who want to continue attending HSD, or for new students who may wish to attend here. And then we have also made a provision for the release of up to 70 of our district resident students who may wish to attend other districts. And as we do every year, we go school by school and kind of evaluate what placements they have, what space they have based on their class sizes and different things. And then we allow principals the opportunity to weigh in and tell us where they think they might be able to accommodate additional students. And so the spreadsheet reflects where those opportunities exist and at what grade levels, and if there are any kind of caveats or restrictions around those acceptances. Those usually are for schools that offer school-wide dual language. So if you were above third grade, then you need to have either had experience previously in a dual language program or have Spanish as your home language, and then that makes participation in that program a lot easier. So yep, on your screen right now is a snapshot of that draft plan that has also been shared in your board folder. And if that is approved by you tonight, then we will make that live on our website on April 1st. And then families will have between April 1st and May 15th to fill out an inter-district transfer form to start that process.
Are there any questions for Beth? Mark has a hand raised.
What do you prefer, the hand raise or the question mark? Do you care?
Doesn't matter. I'm watching both.
Okay. More of a comment than a question. I just want to remind our board colleagues that it is through the inter-district transfer process that the wonderfully talented school board member Devlin Nill comes to HSD. So we are glad to have him on board, and it was through this process he was able to come here.
Nice. Yes, our philosophy has always been to try to accommodate any transfers that we can, because our ultimate goal is to put students in the most optimal learning environment that they can be in. So we're happy to participate.
So I'm looking for a motion.
I move that the Board of Directors adopt the plan presented for inter-district transfers for the 2021 through 2022 school year.
Second.
Okay, so it has been moved by Adira and second by Jackie. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, please let me know your vote in the chat. Lisa? There she goes. I think you just forgot to hit enter. The yes votes are Martin Granum, Yadira Martinez, Mark Watson, Jackie Spross, Sheehan Kim, Lisa Allen, and myself. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is our wireless access points purchase approval with Jordan.
Yes, we've wrapped up a request for proposal process that looked at both specifications and cost of a new wireless system for all of our buildings across the district. Include both the management system and what new wireless access points. And so after completing that process, looking at cost and meeting district required specifications, the winner of the RFP process was Harbor Tech Mobility. And so we're requesting the approval of that contract.
There's a raised hand by Mark.
Hi, Jordan. At some point when we were working on the bond and discussing the wireless technology in our buildings, we had discussed the concept of fence-to-fence Wi-Fi. Is that still a thing we're working towards, or is that not a project anymore?
That project's budget was initially re-allotted to the dark fiber project. And so still looking at that down the road. That's not part of this wireless proposal. But looking at that down the road, part of this is also we're doing this project through or applying to have it done through the E-rate process, which will hopefully fund and provide and get reimbursement for 60% of this cost. So if we're successful on that and a couple of the other projects come in, we may be able to bring back some of those things. So it's still on my list of things that we're looking at, but it's not included in this one right here.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jordan. If there aren't any more questions for Jordan, I'm looking for a motion.
I move that the board of directors award the contract for the wireless access point and wireless management system project to Harbor Tech Mobility at the amount of $1,266,546.
Second.
So it has been moved by Martin, second by Mark. Is there any further discussion? Martin?
Yeah, after a pretty tough public comment session, I figure I'll take this opportunity to say something good. Jordan and the ITS team have really done an amazing job in the technology environment that we suddenly found ourselves in during this pandemic. And I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you, Jordan, and commend you and your entire IT team for the amazing work that you've done.
Thank you.
Okay, please let me know in the chat. Yes votes are Jackie Spross, Yadira Martinez, Lisa Allen, Martin Granum, Sheehan Kim, Mark Watson, and myself. The motion carries. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Our next item is our reports and discussion section, and our next item is our financial report.
Thank you, Erica. I would like to, there's just one highlight on our example for supporting principals as instructional leaders in working with the Human Resources Department, Brian Hott specifically. We've done a lot of creative contract work with our substitute provider to anticipate the needs of our schools as we return to in-person instruction. And that's just an example of how kind of one of those behind the scene activities that we're doing. Kind of proud of it. Our substitute provider has been really good. And if folks are interested in supporting our schools through them, their information is on our website. So a quick plug for that. And also happy to answer any questions you might have about the incident reports. All-time low there again, and our cash flows.
More good news, Michelle. Thank you for that. I see a hand up by Jackie.
I just want to take a minute to point out the voucher program that your finance manager, Jennifer Zavatsky, is working on to support our families for emergency supplies. I think that is an awesome program that we're piloting that's going to remove some barriers for our families. So I wanted to just say thank you for that.
I will pass that on. She's done a lot of work
Absolutely.
to get that off the ground, and it is exciting. We haven't been able to do that before.
Yeah, I think that is spot on. Thank you.
Any other questions for Michelle? Okay, thank you, Michelle. Our next item is our first reading of our high school course approval with Travis and Linda Osuna.
Thank you very much. So it is my honor tonight to introduce a course that's come forward from our high school leaders and through our Community Curriculum Advisory Committee. This is kind of the convergence of two assets that are incredible in Hillsboro. One is our language assets with our students, and the other is our career pathways programming. So I just want to acknowledge a couple folks who are here. Julie Casper's here, assistant principal at Century High School. I didn't think you were going to be able to be here, so thank you for being here. Julie has been a leader in CTE and a member of the executive team of our career and college pathways work. So Julie, thank you for your leadership at Century and across our district. We also have Brooke and Kelly here, who, as you know, are the architects of our career pathways expansion. And we did have Becky Kingsmith here earlier today. I don't see her, but she's also a supporter of this work and has helped us shepherd the process to get the course to this point where we recommend it to you for a 30-day review. I'm going to pass to Kelly to introduce the team, and then we'll have a presentation, and then Linda will recap the conversation from the CCAC and tell you how they voted, and then it'll be up to the board to review the proposal over the next month. So Kelly, please take it away.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. I'm really excited for you to hear a little bit about the translation and interpretation program of study that's being proposed by Melissa Ellis and her partner in crime, Michelle Gray, who are their wonderful teaching partner team at Century High School. Michelle's not able to be here tonight, so Missy's going to be the one that will be doing the presentation this evening. But you'll be hearing about a program that is around high wage, high demand, especially high demand in this area of interpretation and translation services, and offering a program of study that many of our students have been asking for quite some time, and where they can give back to the community and be able to leave the program earning a living wage and working their way through school, having many career opportunities. So I'd like to hand it off to Missy to tell you a little bit more about the program that she's proposing.
All right, good evening. I am so excited to be here to present our proposal for the Interpreting and Translation Focused Program of Study. Over the last several years, the district has developed and expanded the language and bilingual programs. We feel that it's really important for us to provide an opportunity for our diverse students to utilize the skills to prepare for a career in interpreting and/or translation. So in Hillsboro, the school district currently has students who speak more than 100 languages other than English. I just recently learned that there were so many. Many of these languages are in high demand for interpreting and translation. There are also currently 2,827 students enrolled in the district's dual language program. In the Interpreting and Translation Focused Program of Study, students will train to advance their skills, to help their community, and to also potentially provide them with a head start towards a career as an interpreter or translator, or to be able to utilize these skills as part of whatever career they choose. So when we began researching interpreting programs for high school students, we were only able to find 2 in the United States. One was on the East Coast, and one of them was at the Puget Sound Skills Center in Burien, Washington. So Michelle and I went and visited that program, and they let us look at everything that they have. And so we were able to utilize many of the things that we learned while developing our program. The program will include 2 years of training. The first year will focus on an introduction to interpreting and translation and language skill building. In the second year, students will continue to develop their interpreting and translation skills and will also get practical experience through internships, community service opportunities. They will also focus on career building and post-high school planning, including several of the Oregon employability skills. The program will be open to students in grades 10 through 12 who are bilingual. Students will take a proficiency exam during the first year course to determine their language level. Students going into the community will need to show proficiency in English and in their target language at a qualifying level. And so we've identified that qualifying level at an intermediate mid, according to the actual scale of languages. We will also explore many of the different career possibilities in the area of interpreting and translation, but we will focus on developing skills for the educational and medical settings. So there are several benefits for students who want to study to be an interpreter or a translator. As a career, it has a faster than average job growth rate, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. It is also something that students can do as a job while they continue their education or post-high school training. As you can see on this slide, wages for a career in interpreting and translation range from $40,000 to $210,000 per year. This includes jobs in schools, medical interpreting, on up to the highest, which is at the very top level interpreter for the UN. So there are different levels of education required based on the kind of interpreting a person is doing. For this program, we're going to be focusing on educational interpreting and medical interpreting. So educational interpreting jobs require a range from a high school diploma or GED to an associate's degree. And I have a couple of examples on there from Hillsboro School District and Beaverton School District. And then medical interpreting has two different levels, qualification and certification. Both of those require students, the interpreters, to complete a 60-hour class. For qualification, students also need to do 15 hours of documented experience. And for certification, they need to do 30 hours of experience. So the students need to be 18 years old when completing the qualification and certification process, but they can complete the requirement before turning 18. But then when they submit their applications, they need to be 18 years old. And so our goal is to become an official site offering medical interpreting and training that will allow students to complete the 60-hour course requirement. And then they would just need to pass the certification exams and pass a background check upon completing the training. And then the hours that they complete in year 2 would count towards the 30 hours of field experience that is required. I have been speaking with the Oregon Health Authority about that, and they're very excited about the possibility of having a high school trained interpreters. So year 1 of the program, year 1 of the program will consist of developing the skills needed for interpreting and translation, as well as ethics, vocational exploration and preparation, and language study and development. In year 2, it will be a continuation of the skills that they're learning in year 1, and it will provide the students with field experience in interpreting and translation through an internship or volunteering in the community. Through this course, students will complete their senior project and will also work towards achieving the Oregon Seal of Biliteracy. At the end of interpreting and translation 1, students will take either the stamp test or the Willed Speak language proficiency exam to determine their level. In fact, my students are taking that tomorrow. It will be important that the students who represent the school district are able to demonstrate that they have the skills necessary to accurately interpret and translate documents. Students will never be placed in a situation where private information will be discussed about other students. So we were supposed to present this course last year, but when COVID happened, it was postponed. But so we did have a pilot class this year. And in our current class, we had 18 students for Q1 and 17 students for Q3. These students are from Century and Hill High. And we had very little time to get information and word out about the course last year. So we're pretty optimistic that we're hoping that we can at least double that number this year. In the current class, we have students who speak Spanish, French, Vietnamese, and Kirundi. And then 5 of our students have already qualified for the Oregon Seal of Biliteracy. So, and then this year we didn't need additional FTE in our department as we were able to shift some of the courses to be able to offer this course. And we didn't need any additional funds for materials or textbooks. Really, when we went and visited Puget Sound and Burien, we were able to get a lot of materials from them. And being in distance learning has actually made it easier to do a lot of the things because the students have their technology with them, and there's a lot of videos and programs and we can use a lot of the programs for recording, etc. So thank you very much for considering this important and necessary opportunity for our students. Do you have any questions?
Sheehan.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This is so exciting. My family has personally benefited greatly from the use of medical interpreters for over a decade, and this is absolutely critical skills, and I'm so glad and pleased to see that this could be potentially a curriculum that we offer. So thank you so much, Melissa.
Maybe also if we had a chance to let Linda share a little bit, there might be more questions that we could answer as well. So Missy, thank you for the really good presentation, and thank you for your leadership here. And Linda, why don't you add a few comments to the presentation?
Sure. I can tell you that CCAC was very, very excited to see this. The fact of the matter is that our kids are already doing this. They're already interpreting for their families. So to get this certification, to get the formal training, not only gives them, as she mentioned earlier, a wage, a really good wage, but it gives them a sense of pride in who they are and their culture. And to be highlighted like this, I was just totally impressed. Not only was I impressed, I just might add that this was unanimously voted on in agreement to go ahead and submit and propose this to the board. So we were unanimous, which is pretty good for us because we usually have hearty conversations. And this one was just knocked it out of the park. Congratulations.
Thank you, Linda, and thanks for your leadership with the CCAC. Happy to answer any questions like from the Century perspective, CCAC, or district perspective on this course before we wrap up.
I don't see any, but I just want to second what Sheehan mentioned and what Linda emphasizes that many of our students are already done that. Having been a student myself that had to translate for my family and parents, this would have been to have. And I think oftentimes I hear from people in our community that are learning about the programs that we're doing, and they're always like, wow, I wish I could go to high school again so I could get some of these opportunities. So I'm just glad that we're doing a lot of these creative and out of the box ideas that meet what our community is asking for, and also what the strengths that come from our community already. So thank you all for your hard work on this, and for the CCAC for their participation and endorsement of this.
Thanks, Erica. So Julie and Missy, we'll follow up next board meeting and let you know how the vote goes. You've brought it this far. Great job. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. Our next item on here is our policies first reading. And we have, I think, Travis, you're back up again with instruction.
Yeah, no comments on the policies, just happy to answer questions in the next 30 days or if there are any.
Don't see any hands raised or comments. So if there is an additional follow-up question, just Travis is the contact for these first reading policies. So our next item is our HCU and HEA reports. And let me see if I see Jill or Melody.
I'm here.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. Jill Golay, Hillsboro Education Association Union President. And I am here to share this evening that we have an agreement for the hybrid in-person instruction. And so very excited, a lot of hard work on both sides, on the HSD side and the HEA bargaining team. So we're really looking forward to moving forward. Of course, always looking forward to having a little bit of a break, spring break coming up. And I wanted to also share that every year the Hillsboro Education Association offers 2 scholarships to our members who have seniors. And so that currently we're accepting applications, and that runs through March 26th. So if you know of anybody that is a teacher, they're a teacher for the district, but their student can be a senior at any of the schools in the area, private school, or any of the neighboring schools. And we encourage them to apply for our scholarship. And that's about all I have. I'm just glad to be here, and thank you, everybody. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you, school board. We really appreciate you and the hours of volunteerism that you offer the teachers and the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Melody, are you on here?
I'm here. I have to go over to my report. Okay. So hello, it's hard to believe that it's been a year that we've been out of the schools. We're excited to be returning to the schools. Classified staff is also happy that we've been a part of the planning of returning to the schools. And I'm happy to let you know that we have also reached an agreement with the district on an MOU relating to the returning in-person learning. We're just waiting for signatures. There was a lot of hard work on our end and HSD's end too, but we've reached an agreement. So while we're happy and excited to be returning to the schools and doing all of the tasks that the classified staff are charged with performing, we have had many classified staff in the schools during COVID. Our custodians and our nutrition services and many of our administrative support staff. They have been showing up in the schools and the different locations while many of us have been working from home. We have even had some of our SEA EAs in the schools supporting students in the LIPI and the SLIPI programs. Even more of the classified are feeling more comfortable with returning to the schools now that they've had the opportunity to receive the vaccines. And more will feel more comfortable, and they'll continue to feel that way as more get the vaccine and both doses. But I come here to speak for the classified staff, so I'd like to talk about some emails and phone calls that we're receiving from them. We're receiving emails and phone calls every day, and they are asking about the equity within the district. Many are feeling that they come second. Some of the things that I am hearing are that they are feeling confused and really frustrated, and some of them are feeling berated and beat down. Some have referred to the fact that the morale is at the lowest that they've seen it in years. And while we're excited to return to the school, including some of those that have these feelings, they can't help but feel like they are just waiting for the kids to show up, and then they'll be given schedules, including when they'll have lunches and breaks. This is all unknown at this moment. We don't have all of the answers they are looking for, so we refer them back to their principals and or supervisors, or to benefits if they have leave questions. We have been told that some schedules will come out this week along with the trainings, and I'm hoping that this will answer a lot of questions that the classified staff have. But it would be nice if the district had a district-wide return plan for classified staff instead of leaving it up to individual schools and locations. For example, the Wednesday schedules. These will be asynchronous days. However, some classified staff have been instructed to report to schools when they could work from home to support the students. This inconsistent schedule also leaves more uncertainty for childcare purposes and planning of personal schedules. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Melody. Now we're going to move on to our discussion time, and our two student reps had to step out. Two of our student reps had to step out before our meeting concluded. So Devlin, you're the only one of our students rep that is left. If you have any comments for today.
I actually do have a few things that I would like to say. First off, I would like to thank everybody who was giving presentations today, and everybody who presented, everybody who showed up. I feel like a lot of the stuff that was shared today was really informative. Also, this is actually just something that I found it's just something that I really wanted to share. I guess I believe Maya Muro, I believe she actually, I nominated her for the, you guys nominated her for the CCAC. She actually is in my AP English language class, which is, I just wanted to, say that, if she's listening to this, I really am looking forward to see what she can do. She's always been showing up to class, and she's always been a really good student. So I really am looking forward to seeing what she can do. The other thing the final thing that I really wanted to mention was, as far as returning to school, I feel like my thoughts overall on this topic have been relatively clear. One thing that I would just like to reinforce is that a lot of the data that has been talked about today was specifically about our graduation rates. And I would also just like to point out that a lot of the measure of success in school isn't just graduation rates, and it's not just grades. It's about it's about a lot of the experience too. And I feel like that's something that hasn't really been talked about, partially because there isn't really a quantifiable way to say or to discuss it. So I'd just like to give a little bit of my personal experience on this topic, because that's really all I can do. And I feel like a lot of the students that are doing fine, or supposedly that are getting good grades, aren't actually doing fine. I have a lot of friends in cross country, and I have some friends in that I just talk to regularly, and they get good grades in school, but ultimately they have other responsibilities that cause a lot of issues with their schoolwork. For example, it's maybe I know there's one student in my AP Calc class, and he can only come into class 15 minutes a day because he's working during that time period. The 15 minutes that he comes in is his break. And I know that there's one of my friends, he takes care of his younger siblings, and that's another big responsibility that, that's just a big responsibility for a lot of students. And I know that personally, the amount of times that I have had, the system doesn't work as well for everybody in its current form. I know that the amount of times that I personally haven't gotten the material, and I've had to stay up late and study just to make sure that I even am able to keep up with everything. It's been a lot. I've sometimes been working 60 hours a week when it's been really bad. Sometimes it's closer to 80. And I don't feel like I'm getting good grades in my classes. I'm getting straight A's right now, but I don't feel like I'm legitimately learning. I feel like I'm learning how to pass a class, but I don't feel like I'm learning as much as I would be if we were in in-person instruction. So essentially, other than that, all I want to say is that I would like to advocate for, at the very least, going back 2 days a week if that's possible, and if it's possible due to the 100-person cohort size restriction being lifted. And second off, I would also like, if at all possible, go back at the start of Q4 instead of waiting a week. However, if that's not possible due to vaccinations, that's also completely understandable to me. Other than that, thank you for listening. I don't have anything else I need to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Devlin. Now we go on to our superintendent's time.
All right. Excuse me. All right. Thank you. Excuse me. Choking here. Sorry about that. I just want to acknowledge the frustration that we're hearing this evening. While it's difficult to hear, we're fully aware that it's out there, and none of us would choose to be in this situation that we're in. We fully understand that we are better in person than we are in distance learning, and we want nothing more than to get back and to be in person with students. That is something we're looking forward to in an incredible way. And while it's difficult to hear that frustration, I also want the staff members who are listening to know how much I appreciate everything that you do. The teaching staff have transformed the way that we deliver instruction, and that was done without notice. We were in school one day and then we were out the next. And the way that you have transformed your classrooms and delivered instruction to kids, I just want to thank you for that. Our classified staff, and Melody mentioned this, many of those folks have showed up every day since the day we let out, and have transformed their work as well, from delivering meals to kids on bus routes, to taking care of facilities, to installing technology or getting technology in the hands of kids. The work that our classified staff has done, I want to appreciate that as well. Our counselors and our principals, they've done home visits. They've worked to connect with kids. They literally drive and find kids. They put in calls when kids don't show up, and I appreciate that as well. Our administrative team, many of whom you see on this screen, have put in countless hours advocating with the governor, advocating with ODE, advocating with Oregon Health Authority, understanding the guidance, understanding the liability on decisions that are made, and still, even with all of that, you still see things like we just saw here with the teachers coming forward and proposing new classes that they know are going to be good for our kids. So we too want nothing more than to come back. We too are frustrated with the situation, and we too are disappointed by the lack of change in some of the guidance that would have made our work easier in order to get kids back. But I just want to thank the staff for the work that they do daily to make a difference for kids. The hybrid model that we chose was chose very deliberately, and it was chose so that teachers would not have to, and students would not have to reshuffle, so that students could remain with their teachers and they wouldn't have to be assigned a new teacher. And there are trade-offs on every model, but the teachers were clearly asking to remain with their students. We know that their first choice is for their kids to remain with the teachers that they have. And so that's why that model was chosen. So what the community doesn't see is the hours that the board puts in agonizing over decisions, or them sharing their frustrations with the situation as well, or the communication that they do with their legislators, or the advocacy that they do. That's just not something that's seen on the screen during a meeting that lasts a couple hours. So to all of our staff members, I just want to thank you for all of your work. To our community members who have persevered through this, just thank you very much. And to our board members, thank you for the number of hours that you put in. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And move us over to our board of directors time. And I will start. We'll start with Jackie and then Lisa.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, my headset died, so I had to.
It's a little muffled.
Is it? Let's see.
Maybe hold it up to you. No, we can't hear you at all now. Let me come back to you, Jackie, while you're working on that, and let's go to Lisa, and then Mark, you're on deck.
Okay, I remembered the Control D just now, so that would have been helpful earlier. All right, so I want to echo what Martin said. Thanks a lot, Mike, for those comments, and I want to say something similar. You know, I really appreciate all the people who've taken the time to share their thoughts with us, especially with this remote format on Google Meets. It's been a challenge to hear from the community in the way that I think they often like to communicate with us, right? Coming to a board meeting and sharing your thoughts. It's not something that we've been able to offer this last year. And I felt like tonight we got a lot of feedback, more than normal in this pandemic period. So that was really nice. I appreciated that a lot. I do just want to respond briefly and say, I think that Mike said it best. What you see during a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour board meeting is not the work of the board. The work of the board happens much more significantly off the screen, and all of the advocacy that doesn't take place during a meeting where we take care of the business of the district. When we're pushing for better, clearer guidance, or all kinds of things, that's not happening during the board meeting, but that is happening. And so it's important to be aware of that. We also are all members of the same community, and we feel the same pressure and the same frustration. And those of us with students experience those same excruciating moments every single day. Understand, some of us work in education, and we deal with it every day, all day at work too. And we do understand, we do care, we do want to go back in person. It is not a board of 7 people who are just sort of lethargically chilling and oblivious to the fact that this is not ideal. That is not the case at all. So please do not misunderstand who you've elected to represent you, because we are representing the full community to the best of our ability. And that's important. And anyone who tells you that, especially with this board election that was mentioned a couple times in a couple comments, anyone who tells you that the work of the board is only coming to a board meeting, it's probably never talked to a board member. And anyone who tells you that a single school board member can just decide that the schools are going to open magically full time against the regulations that have been set forth by the state government do not understand the system that they're talking about. And I think that it's critical to understand the system you're talking about if you'd like to affect change within that system. So I do hope that people think critically and ask critical questions to the folks who maybe they think represent them a little bit better. So that's one part. The other part is, as a teacher in a different district, you can't work in Hillsboro, I'm so excited to have my students in person. It's happening so soon. I get my second vaccine shot during spring break, and I could not be more jazzed. It is going to be awesome. And more importantly, my second grader and my fifth grader are beside themselves with joy to come back after spring break and see their teachers 3-dimensionally, 4-dimensionally, whatever. It's going to be amazing. So we are so excited that is happening. And I could not be more thrilled that we're finally where we need to be to make that happen. And I just really appreciate all the work that has gone into getting us to this point. Because just like what I said about the board, I know the staff works, exponentially harder to make these things happen and the wheels turn. So thank you all so very much. And that's all.
Did that work? Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
oh, okay. Not that I don't want to cut in. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
You can go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wanted to talk about, I attended a National School Board Association Equity Online Symposium. It's back in, it's probably February. And the keynote was Undoing Miseducation by Brandon P. Fleming. And he's the founder and CEO of Harvard Diversity Project. And something he kept saying really resonated with me, and it was meeting our students where they are and how they show up. And it just tied it kind of all together with our philosophy of every student known by name, strength, and need. So I just wanted to, I just love that, meeting students where they are and how they show up. And I also think that we need to make sure that we're doing that with our staff too, because every single person who's gone through COVID has experienced some sort and some level of trauma, whatever that looks like for them. So I hope that we can do that for our staff as well. Dale, am super impressed by the increased number of students participating in our CTE classes. I saw the numbers and I was like, yeah. So, and I love the idea of evening classes and figuring out different ways to make those work. I echo what Mike and Lisa both said. I recognize, and I agree. It's important for students to get back to school as quickly as possible and as safely as possible for everybody concerned. I mean, students, staff, parents, grandparents, guardians, coaches, athletes, everybody. That means following the safety protocols that are put in place. Tonight, we really heard the level of frustration with OHA, the Oregon Health Authority, and ODE, the Oregon Department of Education, regarding their guidance. And it's very important that people remember that as a district, we have to follow those guidelines. It's not an option where the board can just say, no, we don't want to follow those. We're just going to open schools anyway. And we didn't, and just to clarify, at least I don't remember ever voting to not open schools. So I'm just putting that out there. There's a little kind of misinformation that bothered me for tonight. And I also want to reiterate what Mike said. Our district staff, our teachers, our classified staff, you guys are amazing. I mean, you truly are amazing. Your first priority is and always will be and has been our students. And you have spent countless hours of hard work, dedication, making the return to school possible, making it safe for people. And I just want to personally thank you because I know the logistical nightmare you are dealing with when I think of transportation and how many kids in a class and feeding the kids and making sure that the kids online and the kids in the class can communicate along with the teacher. And my head blows up. And I mean, I know that's kind of silly, but it does. So I want to take a moment to say thank you to everybody who is working so hard and so many hours to make this opportunity, make us be able to go back to school. So that's all I really wanted to say. And I echo what Lisa said to encourage people to be informed on how processes are done, decisions are made. Thank you.
This is Jackie. Mark, and then Martin, you're on deck.
Yeah, of course, I want to echo the comments on my previous board members. Mike, you and your staff are doing an amazing job. I wouldn't wish trying to lead us through a pandemic on anybody, but if I had to pick a group of people to do it with, this is the exact group of people I would like to do it with. Lisa's correct. No board member makes a decision on their own. The school board has one employee, it's Mike, and then he picks the whole rest of the staff. So your team has just been amazing. And to Lisa's point as well, that much of the work we do goes unseen, and that's fine. It's a job we signed up for. And I think Mike is probably too kind to tell you about how frustrated he is with the emails and text questions he receives from me. So I guess thank you for that as well, Mike. I think if you look at the decisions the district has made going all the way back to last summer, recategorizing employees, we were planning for the return to students all along. It's something we've been counting on. We'd all hoped it would happen sooner. Reallocating our resources to make class size small enough so that a cohort of students could return in kindergarten, first and second grade. Those are decisions we made in August or July that we expected to come to fruition in November or October. And the numbers in the virus determine your path. So as things are getting better, I commend the district staff on feeling the pressure that we all feel, and I apologize if my comments, in emails are more aggressive than you'd hope for. Hopefully, we maintain the tone of civility in private conversation that we say and do here. People should be able to agree and disagree politely and with civility. More practical question, looking to the things that have worked. I love that we're keeping that connection time at the beginning, that sort of false start or whatever. And, thinking about the things that building on the successes in Travis, I love Travis's bus line. But, that time every day, let's look at maybe ways that somebody from Liberty or Hill High can participate in the Century Interpreter program without having to use the bus line and go to the fairgrounds and change buses, right? So maybe it's not every day, maybe it's many of the days, and maybe it's a place at Hill High that we know they have good network and a good chair to sit in. So let's figure out ways to use the positive lessons that we've learned during COVID effectively going forward. Thanks, folks.
Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with all my colleagues' comments, and I also wanted to take a moment and try to thoroughly embarrass our chair, Madam Chair Erica Lopez. As you know, that the OSBA, the Oregon School Board Association, annually puts out a call to recognize the Oregon School Board Member of the Year. And so I was busy working on an application, and I was going to enlist the support of all my colleagues. When I found out, because Erica is a member of the board of directors, she is ineligible. So I was not able to put in a nomination, but you're very deserving, Erica, and I really appreciate your leadership, your steadfast and thoughtful leadership. Every time we come together in public session and at all times when we're not in public session, you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Erica.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, next we have Sheehan, and then Yadira, you're on deck.
Thank you. You know, for me, I just wanted to echo Lisa and Mike's remarks. I don't think I could have said it better. In addition to that, I do want to recognize, Mike, your leadership during this time. You have been fearless and tirelessly working around the clock. I think even more so than any person on this call. I know we've all been working hard, but Mike, you really have led us well through this. And so just wanted to appreciate your leadership in that. So thank you.
Okay, my house is being extremely loud right now, so you might hear a lot of background noise. You know, I just want to echo what my board member colleagues and Mike have all said. There's definitely frustration, and we acknowledge that, and we all feel that. You know, we're part of this community too, and I feel as the year has progressed, we have been able to problem solve and adapt to all those changes as well as can be expected. You know, Mike and everyone at the school, teachers, have been doing a great job in just being adaptable and, you know, really keeping the focus on our students. So I'm super appreciative of that. So the 29th now is marked on our calendar by Emmy because she likes to mark everything on the calendar, and she's counting down the days until she gets to see her teacher. And I didn't tell her, by the way, her teacher did. So now she's just waiting. So.
Thank you, everyone. I think the only thing I just wanted to add is that, you know, when we think about, I think a lot of times I hear about our children falling behind, but we're all in the same place. We're all being affected by this pandemic. And there's nobody like winning at it right now. And if we look at that perspective, we're all trying to survive it with the resources that we have in the community and the type of community that we have. And every community looks different. And so I just want to acknowledge the amazing work that our staff has done. And also just, I think sometimes we think about difficult times in a negative way, but they also create a resilient community. And I am so hopeful for our students because this is going to create resiliency in our community. And that's something that it just, life makes you, creates experiences for you to build that. And the more that we can help our students have that support around them to know that they're going to make it out okay, and the more that we can be there and be caring adults, the more that they'll remember this community and how we held them during this time. So I just want to acknowledge all of our staff, our administration, Mike, for your leadership, our board members, because I know all of us are parents. We're also workers in our regular, day job. And then we're also doing this work of trying to do our best to guide our community through this time right now. So I truly appreciate all of you. And I wouldn't trade going through this with anybody else. I really enjoy coming together and meeting, and I can't wait till we're all together. I know none of us are on a priority list to our job unless you're an educator. So we also are looking forward to getting back in person once we have an opportunity to get vaccinated. And so I just want to thank you all, and to our community that's listening, know that we're always reading your emails and getting the information and seeing, what the comments are, and we take that to heart, and we use that information when we advocate to our legislators, when we serve on committees at the governor's level, or when we advocate as a district in the state. So there's many hours that go into advocacy and support and representation of Hillsboro. And I know that that's not very apparent, like we said during this meeting, but there's a lot of work that goes into to this position of volunteering to serve our community. So I just want to also just thank all of our board members for their hard work. So with that, I end our regular session. Thank you.